call the meeting, the July 26th meeting of the Texas State Board of Plumbing Examiners to order. Dawn, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Frank Denton,
Here.
Mr. James Ainsworth,
Present.
Mr. Darren Black,
Present.
Mr. Milton Gutierrez, Mr. William Clock, Mr. Thomas McDonald,
Present.
Mr. Thomas Rice, Ms. Norma Yado, Ms. Yado is with us, but she is virtually. And Mr. Dave Yalovich.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Dawn. My understanding is Mr. Gutierrez is not with us today. I believe that he's closing on a house. Is that right, Lisa? That he's closing on a house. Mr. Clock, I think last we heard he would be here. So I really can't offer an explanation on Mr. Clock, but is there a motion to excuse the absence of Mr. Gutierrez?
Darren Black, so moved.
Second?
Second, Justin McDonald.
Have a motion and a second to excuse the absence of Milton Gutierrez. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. And Ms. Yado is with us also.
Yeah, she just popped up on screen.
Great. Hi, Norma. Good to have you with us. Under Chairman's remarks, really nothing too earth-shattering to report today. I do want to say that we had another excellent town hall meeting. Ron Ainsworth and Tommy Rice and Lisa was able to attend this one in Garland, Texas. We had about 100 folks there, I guess I would say. Very interactive, got a lot of feedback. We got a lot of really good ideas, gave a lot of input. So Ron or Tommy, y'all have anything, or Lisa, anything to add on our town hall meeting in Garland?
I think I'm on, if you can hear me. I'm not sure. I enjoyed it and it was a great chance to get out. So really good turnout. Hope to do it again.
Tommy, anything? No. Ron?
If I can find my, oh, okay, I'm on. I just thought it was very well attended and we really got some good feedback from the plumbers.
Our thanks to our host, I believe it's Milestead Plumbing. We've just got an outstanding facility up there and we're really gracious hosts for us. So our thanks to them. We are still going to stay on our goal of trying to do one of these a month. We desperately need to get to the Houston and the Gulf Coast area and do one or two there. Need to get to South Texas. We want to go back to Fort Worth. We felt we missed maybe the western part of the DFW area by doing Garland. And we need to get to El Paso and do one out there. So hopefully by the end of the year, we will have covered all four corners of the set. Any of the board members have any order that you'd recommend that we go next? Because I'm thinking Houston, Gulf Coast area. Maybe one in Beaumont, Port Arthur, one in Houston.
I agree. I think Houston should be next.
It's a huge metropolitan area. And, you know, we've talked about this, we've went up to Tyler the first time, so we've intentionally tried to cover some of there you are, Bill. Let the record reflect that Bill Clark is here. Yeah, there he is. Okay, good to see you. Thank you for being here. We've tried to do some of the areas that were not reached as readily as the others. And I think, and by doing so, we've neglected some of the biggest metropolitan areas there are. We did Garland last time. Probably the next one, let's try to set it up, try to find a location in the Houston area to do one or two, depending on how many show up, and then maybe one in Beaumont, Port Arthur area, over in that area. So that will be the next one. We'll try to do that one in August. And so staff, if you will start reaching out to someone that can host us there. If push comes to shove, TSTC has a campus in Fort Bend County, which is pretty close to Houston, just adjacent to Houston. So that might be a possibility, unless somebody else has got a facility large enough to accommodate 100 to 150 people for a town hall meeting. So we'll shoot for the Houston area next. And we might do two back to back. We might do Houston and then do Beaumont, Port Arthur. I'm already seeing a volunteer back here, I bet. That'd be wonderful. That'll be wonderful. If you'll get with either Kevin or Lisa and let them know the details, we'll do it. That'd be a great. I've been to your facility and it's a great one. I didn't want to put you on the spot and ask you in front of everybody, but since you volunteered, thanks.
Sir, we also had a request to do Fort Worth since they didn't all come to Dallas.
Right. We will. It was on the list that I was talking about earlier. We'll do Houston, we'll do a Beaumont, Port Arthur, we'll do a Fort Worth, a Corpus Christi, and an El Paso. Not necessarily in that order, but we will do Houston next. Also, I was privileged to be invited to a PHCC board meeting that I attended, I guess it was last week or week before last. And it was somewhat of a town hall type meeting among the PHCC board. And I really appreciated the invitation and got some great feedback there, some good interaction and some excellent questions. One of the questions that came up, and it somewhat relates to what Lisa will be reporting to about later, is continuing education. Lisa, I want you to pay attention to this and see if you can help me explain this. But I was asked the question on continuing education. We're coming off a situation where we used to go July 1st to July 1st. You had to complete your continuing education July 1st to July 1st. We've got some folks that are coming up for renewal, say September the 1st of this year. Their question is, do we have to take continuing education between July and September and then take the same thing over again before the next September rolls around? And the answer to that is no, you do not. It's the one exception while we're making this transition that you can take your 6 hours of continuing education sometime prior to your renewal in 2022. And that 6 hours of CE will be sufficient for your 2023 renewal. It's a one-time only, and only for those people whose license expired after July the 1st. It doesn't make much sense for them to take 2 6-hour courses of the same thing within a 14-month period of time. So Lisa and I have talked about it. Lisa, did I explain that correctly, or anything you want to add?
Yes, sir. You explained it well. The only thing I want to add is this pertains to people that that expired July and after.
Correct.
If you expired back in May and June and you're just now calling us, you need a 22 class.
Yeah.
And then you turn around and take a 23 and you're good through the transition period. And you said before, Mr. Chairman, we're not going to kill anybody, but we need you know, we need everybody to work towards doing as close to what they need to do as possible, but
That's a great distinction. We are talking about those who expire after July.
absolutely.
But on those folks that do expire after July and whose renewal comes up before January the 1st, they take 1 6-hour CE, and that's good for 22 as well as 23, right?
Well, yeah, it's going to be good for 23 because they should have already had a 22.
Exactly. Exactly.
If they
So
didn't
once
take a
once they
22,
get the 22, they can use that for the 23.
yeah,
But it's only for those folks who expired after July 1st.
right. They should have already had a 22 in their last year. So they'll be starting on the brand new 23 course, and the 23 course and every subsequent course after this year will start December. So there's just this small group of people that are going to get pushed over the edge.
Yeah, I'm in that small group. I'm a July 31st renewal
There you go.
master, but we have always scheduled our classes in September. So I took my class for this renewal, September of last year. So I was always basically a year ahead.
Yeah.
But I'll need to take another class for sometime before the end of the year for next year, which we already have scheduled for September. So
Yeah, you'll be fine. And the best thing to do is to look yourself up, or the provider, if they would do it, look up on the website and see what they're missing. If they're missing 22s, they may need a 22 because they're late.
Any other questions or comments on that? That was something that significantly came up during the.
That was something that was significant that came up that was asked after I left the meeting, probably because I didn't know the answer to it either at the meeting. So they followed up with an email and I asked Lisa and she told me how we're going to handle it. So I think we've got it straightened out, and I hope everyone is clear about that now. So the other thing I would report that Darren Black and I attended virtually a TSTC advisory board meeting for plumbing. And I want to thank Darren. He has really been intricately involved with TSTC and working with their instructors and their leadership at TSTC. He is, prior to Darren coming on the board, Ron and Robbie Janis initially put this in motion for us by going up to the school and reviewing the curriculum and meeting the instructors and going through the school. And Darren, thank you for kind of picking up the mantle there and participating so actively with helping them develop their plumbing program. And I should add, why can we work? I've said this before, and most of you know this, but why would we work with TSTC and not some other trade school? Because TSTC is a state agency, just like we're a state agency. So we're able to do that with our interagency agreements. And also, as a state agency, anything that TSTC does or any curriculum they develop is available to any trade school in Texas, just for the asking. So by working with them to develop a curriculum and to fine tune their program, we're also helping any other trade school in Texas that wishes to duplicate it or follow that. So Darren, thank you for your participation in that. Outreach efforts. Since our last meeting, Lynn arranged a meeting for me to meet with Brian Daniels, who is the chairman of the Texas Workforce Commission, which I met with him this past, about 2 weeks ago, I guess it is. A great meeting. I brought him totally up to speed about what we're doing at the Plumbing Board and House Bill 636. And as a result of that, he has informed me that high schools and trade schools will be eligible for one of their grant programs. And they've got $25–30 million in these grant programs to help high schools or trade schools who want to implement a plumbing program to buy the equipment necessary in order to do it. And we're working on the final workings of a joint news release we can put out with the Workforce Commission and the Plumbing Board, announcing that to high schools and trade schools. This coming tomorrow, I guess it is, Brian Daniels, the chairman of the Workforce Commission, Mike Reeser, the chancellor of CSTC, and myself have got a meeting in the Workforce Commission office to further explore other things that we might do jointly or work together on as three agencies, state agencies, to try to promote the building trades in general and plumbing in specific. So I'm optimistic of some good things are going to come out of that. And if you have any ideas or thoughts after the meeting, please pass them on to me. And I don't have anything else as far as comments about our activity or our outreach. Ron, did you have something else?
Yes, I just wanted to touch on that. And I'd appreciate if you hold that $25 million public announcement till I have a meeting tomorrow, because we're actually meeting with Skill Point and trying to get it in West Texas and Midland ISD, and be happy to pass this DWC grant along to them. But I'm kind of excited that we're moving some of that west.
Well, funny you should ask me to hold that, because Brian Daniels told me not to announce it either until after next week. So, I'll certainly be happy to do that for both of you. But it is pretty exciting, and it's nothing new. It's just what is new is plumbing being included in this, because prior to that time, you could not complete a curriculum which would lead to a license. It would lead to an occupation, but you couldn't be licensed. And in order to be eligible for these programs, your course of study has to lead to a certification or a license. With House Bill 636, once they complete the curriculum, whether it be trade school or high school, they can sit for the tradesman exam. Thus, those educational institutions are going to be eligible for that grant program. So I'm real excited about that. All things are coming together, and I think we're building the groundwork to really supply Texas with a lot of plumbers in the future. So thanks to all of you for what you're doing. Anything else?
Item number 6 on the agenda. If you turn to your
If you'll turn to your first tab under item number 6 on the agenda, you might recall at our last board meeting, we had a discussion among our board, and I think a general consensus that if an individual has passed the national certification for MedGas and received that certification, we did not see the necessity of those individuals having to come to Texas and retake the Texas test. Basically, we had a agreement or consensus among the board that we would recognize that, and it would eliminate the requirement. If you hold that national certification, then you would not have to come retake our test again. It seemed like it was a duplication of efforts and no need to do that. So what you have before you today, and it's an action item that will need a motion and an approval, is to approve this language, which accomplishes that. And we're basically approving a proposal to be posted in the Texas Register, which will be posted for public comment for 30 days. After receiving public comment, it will come back to the board for final approval and adoption. Sometime during that period of time, and I'm not exactly clear when, it goes to the Governor's Office of Compliance for antitrust measures. Lynn, is that during the posting period or after the posting period?
We can submit it to the governor's office after it has been published in the Texas Register. I will talk to the Office of Regulatory Compliance to see if this is a rule that would need review by their office. Ultimately, I would argue that it expands the opportunities for people to take an endorsement path. So that seems to be in the opposite direction of.
I would agree. I would agree with you. It's just they have asked us to review some things that didn't seem to me like they had an anti-competitive element to them. But at any rate, if you would make sure that, assuming that the board recommends and approves the posting of this language in the Texas Register, that you notify the Office of Regulatory Compliance.
Yes, sir.
At the
And
appropriate
I'm
time.
sorry, for the record, this is Lynn Latone, General Counsel. Yes, sir. Should the board vote and move to post these for 30 days of public comment, we will send this over to the Governor's Office of Regulatory Compliance for possible review on the day it's published at the Register.
Okay. Any discussion or question about this? If there are no questions, it would be appropriate. Is there a motion to recommend for publication the proposed Rule 22 Texas Administrative Code Section 363.9 in the Texas Register for 30 days of public comment? Is there a motion in that regard?
Ron Ainsworth, so moved.
Second? Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, board members. Item number 7. We have pretty well put on our agenda every week an item of discussion of agency initiatives to deter unlicensed activity. And one of the things that I did in preparation for that, so many times with 20 years of public service serving on boards such as this, a lot of times you take what is discussed at a board meeting, there's a disconnect between what the board wants done and what the staff is actually doing. The board a lot of times talks about things and nothing ever happens from the staff report. So I went back this time, as I do every time, and I looked at all of our enforcement actions since our last board meeting. And if you total up the cease and desist orders, which I think there are 12, there are 79 board orders and administrative penalties for our approval. And I believe there are 20 default orders. That adds up to 111 disciplinary actions that we're going to be asked to approve later on. 57% of all of those had to do with unlicensed or improper licensed activity. So I would have to tell you, I feel from my perspective that the enforcement staff is doing exactly what the board has asked. 64 of the 111 or 57% of every disciplinary action that's taken since our last board meeting have been for unlicensed activity or improper license. So thank you, Steve. I think you're following through on the wishes of the board, and I thank the staff for their priority that they put on that. That's obviously important to the industry. We hear it at every town hall meeting we go to. And the cold, hard reality is, though, we've got, 8 investigators covering 30 million people in 254 counties in Texas. So what we do is minuscule compared to the problem. I talked with Brian Daniels of the Texas Workforce Commission about trying to find some money for some public service announcements. In my viewpoint, the only way we're going to effectively move the needle on this is by appealing directly to the consumers. We have got to convince the consumers why it's to their advantage to hire a licensed individual versus an unlicensed individual. And the only way we can do that is to educate the consumer. So I'm searching and looking through other agencies. We don't have the funds to do an effective statewide program, but possibly the Workforce Commission, who's got millions and millions of dollars, might find it within their budget an opportunity to promote the use of licensed tradespeople versus unlicensed tradespeople as a consumer protection move. So we're trying to do that. Whether we'll be successful or not, I can't say right now, but we're trying to find the money to do that. Also, at every town hall meeting, and anytime I can get a group of plumbers together, and I would ask each of you to do the same thing, no plumbing company in the state of Texas should be posting one print ad, radio ad, or TV ad that they don't brag on the fact that they employ licensed plumbers. The plumbing industry is going to have to help us, because there has to be a distinction between a licensed plumber and a guy advertising as a plumber. And the only way we can make that distinction is if licensed plumbers advertise and brag about the fact that they are licensed by the state of Texas to perform plumbing in Texas. And it just drives me up the wall when I see TV commercial after TV commercial of plumbing companies, these big plumbing companies, not one word about we use licensed plumbers. As far as the consumer is concerned, there's no such thing as a license. You're either a plumber or you're not a plumber. And we have to create a distinction between a licensed plumber and a guy just claiming to be a plumber. And one way to do that, to help, is if we can encourage all of our plumbing companies to brag on the fact that they employ licensed plumbers. And then a consumer will start asking, would you have a license? So it's just part of an overall communication program to help educate the consumer. So anything you can do to help in that regard, it would be well appreciated. And there's no one silver bullet that's going to fix this problem. We've talked about it many, many times, and there's just not a silver bullet. We'll be talking about this same subject long after I'm gone. Everybody will still be talking about these outlaws who are out there without a license. But all we can do is the best that we can do and try to uncover every technique we can use to try to encourage licensed plumbers. Also, Lisa, I'm going to ask you, I think on tab 2 in this regard is a form that Lisa has developed, and I don't know if you've distributed it yet. Would you talk a little bit about that, because it directly relates to unlicensed plumbing activity?
Yes, sir. We've worked with the enforcement department, general counsel, and done some research, and we put together what we're going to call an incident report. And that's going to be specific for an incident that an inspector will have witnessed, and we'll be able to track them separately from a complaint. It'll be a document or a form. A copy of it's in your packet, but the inspector will supply the information related to the incident that they witnessed. And we're going to kind of hold their, I hate to use the term, but hold their feet to the fire, because on more than one occasion, we'll get from consumers, but inspectors too, maybe a complaint or an email. I'm sure Steve can support this, that says, you know, they saw 3 guys out installing plumbing. We need the name of the 3 guys. We need to know the plumbing they were installing, the address they were installing it at, and some sort of backup information. And so we decided, well, we'll just tailor this just for those types of incidents and for the inspector to utilize this form. And the intent is for us to also be able to track them separately from a regular complaint as well. And hopefully we get this form and the workings of it all pinned down, and we'll introduce it at some of the inspector association meetings, maybe BOAT, maybe BPI, and we'll get it on our website too. So it's still got a little work to be done, but we're there.
Thanks, Lisa.
I would like to pose a question to Lisa, Lynn, and Steve. Do you believe that under our plumbing license law, that an inspector is required to report unlicensed activity if they see it? Anybody want to tackle that?
I think all three of us want to.
One of you jump on it. Beg your pardon?
Required to enforce the plumbing license.
Which includes reporting unlicensed activity. Is that a fair statement?
At least to their own city, but probably to us as well. In other words, they can issue citations and, do those things that they can do, within their own jurisdiction, but reporting to us, ours are administrative penalties, so we can record and we can keep up with, those activities that are going on within that city, which I would think would be helpful to all involved.
Would the failure of a plumbing inspector to do that task subject them to a penalty from the State Board of Plumbing Examiner?
I believe it would, but we'll let council jump on that if she'd like, but I can tell you what I've learned.
Ramping this up, because I tell you, we have to get really, really serious about this.
Mhm.
And the only way we can do that is for some help. And if a person holds a plumbing inspector license and they're required to do something, and if something as critical as unlicensed activity, we're gonna have to start, it's the last resort, but we're gonna have to start using enforcement measures in order to make sure that they're doing what they're required to do.
And I want to add something too, and I believe the inspectors will say this, it's always been true. There's not enough of them, just like there's not enough field investigators. But what this will do, especially if they don't have the teeth in their town to enforce something or issue a penalty or whatever the case may be, this is an avenue for them to be supportive, do what we believe is required, which is to enforce the plumbing license law. But in one way, it should help them as well, because they're not going to deal with a whole lot of it. They're going to give it to us. We're going to handle the situation. We just need those eyes and ears and accurate information. So that's my take on it. I think it'll help them and us.
Yes, Lisa, I think that would be very helpful. I know in our municipality.
My concern with that is that I have not met.
You got Norma on.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Norma.
Yeah, just like you said, Lisa, I concur with you. We are understaffed, but we're meeting.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Norma, hang on just 1 second. We're trying to get the audio where everyone can hear you. There we go.
Yes, we are. Just like Lisa mentioned, a lot of municipalities are facing the challenge of being understaffed. And, I think that's all the way around. And finding also qualified applicants, inspectors to do that enforcement. So that is one of the current challenges that we are facing, as municipalities. But I do agree with what you're saying, Mr. Chair, that we should be more proactive in doing that enforcement. I know we currently are in our city, and it really helps when we do, have hopefully this new form that they're devising that will help us with that enforcement.
Thanks, Norma. Before we got the audio straightened out, Norma is supportive of what we're doing. She restated that what Lisa had said, all plumbing inspectors that from a municipality standpoint are limited as far as time. But hopefully this form that Lisa has provided and will distribute to plumbing inspectors will assist them in making a quick and easy way to report unlicensed plumbing activity to the state where we can take appropriate action. So thanks, Norma, for your support and your comments. And thank you, staff. I don't want us to take our eye off the ball on this issue. Again, it's the one issue that we hear the most complaints from plumbers, licensed plumbers about, is the amount of unlicensed activity. So we need to keep our eye on the ball and stay focused and never let up on it, and not just give it lip service and not talk about it next meeting, because it's going to be on the agenda next time too. So
Can I add something?
Please do.
The other thing is some of the things that we do see and some of the disciplines that we do issue, those are a result of the other extra eyes and ears we have, which are the licensed plumbers. And it's very hard for Steve to, there again, go catch the guy they saw installing plumbing when we don't know who the guy is or what the plumbing was. But we don't want to deter anyone from sending him a concern that could possibly result in catching them on a true provable violation on down the line whenever they do stings or whatever. So we certainly don't mind having information provided to us from plumbers. It's just that in these cases, hopefully we have the actual evidence to act on them, whereas some of the concerns that Steve gets may be something that has information that's useful in the future. So it's kind of everybody working together. Hopefully we'll make another dent in it.
Lisa, do we currently have an online way of doing that same thing?
Doing a complaint?
Yeah.
There's a fillable form for a complaint.
So we're just taking basically that and we're putting it into paper form that someone could carry around on their clipboard in case they see something, or how would this work?
They have to actually file a complaint for us to be able to do some type of action. And it has to have all the pertinent information in it, but it's not uncommon. We receive a lot of emails that come through info or the complaint box or wherever. And it says, hey, there's a subdivision going on at, the end of the road on the west side, and we have concerns about it. Well, you don't have evidence, but you have information. So your field investigator may go right around in that area and who knows, get lucky. Every eye and every ear is helpful.
We get a lot of information almost on a daily basis. That's a concern, as we call it. It's not a formal complaint. And it's the plumber that I got just printed off several this morning. Vehicles that are advertising for plumbing, got their plates, they know to give me the plates, give me all the information I can get. And then I'll forward that to the local field investigator. And many times, we'll even do Google Maps and look at their address. One time we had one that the guy said he wasn't advertising, for plumbing, but a sign in his yard said Plumero and his phone number, which matched up everything, which matched the vehicle, so our Dallas field investigator went out and took more pictures and was able to, contact him basically from the street and say, I'm looking at your sign right now, sir. So yeah, we get a lot of that. But a lot of people don't see that, they don't see the work behind the scenes, so to speak. So we just, in between all the work that we have to do, we have to keep our resolution time down. That's a big thing. We got consumer complaints we gotta stay on top of. So in the mix of everything else, they're out there doing that as well. And those are what we would call internal complaints or TSBPE complaints. They wouldn't have they would be, so to speak, anonymous.
Something else that we'll talk about maybe when we get to Steve's report after lunch. But I asked Steve a question yesterday, and let's talk about service plumbing, or we can talk about construction or industrial plumbing. If an investigator finds a apprentice or finds an unlicensed person that was dispatched by a responsible master plumber to do a job that he was not licensed to do, we always, if we catch that unlicensed person, we will file a complaint and be an appropriate fine or cease and desist or whatever. But Steve tells me, and glad to hear this. Whenever we identify those situations, a corresponding complaint will be filed against the responsible master plumber. So it's not only a complaint against the apprentice that's doing unlicensed work or doesn't have a license, but also there'll be a corresponding. We should never see one of those without seeing a complaint against the responsible master plumber, because ultimately it is up to the responsible master plumber to ensure the people that are doing that work under his license have the appropriate license to perform the work. And if he dispatches someone or a person that's not licensed or not appropriate license to do the work, there's repercussions against the responsible master too. And I don't like enforcement, but I'm going to tell you, you can't have compliance without enforcement. I would love not to have enforcement at all, because I hate to find people that are trying to make a living. But in order to have compliance, you have got to have enforcement. It'd be great if everyone drove the speed limit without traffic cops, but unfortunately, that's just not the way it works. You have to have highway patrolmen out on the streets enforcing the law, or the law wouldn't mean anything. So thank you, staff, and thank you, Steve, and your enforcement people for the job that you do. It's a huge job. And all we can do is ask that you do the best that you can do. And from my perspective, when you look at the percentage of cases that have to do with unlicensed activity, I think you're doing a pretty doggone good job as far as the priorities that you're placing on unlicensed activity on behalf of the industry. You, like I say, with 8 investigators, you're doing what you can do, but it's obvious that a big part, or over half of what you're doing, is attacking the problem that's the biggest in the industry. So, Ron?
Go back to a comment earlier when you're talking about the inspectors enforcing, and we certainly want their help. I'm not sure I'm in favor of penalizing those people right now. We need them as allies right now, and there might be a time where that's appropriate, but I think now we ought to just seek all the assistance we can get and not make a inspector mad that, hey, I'm going to be subject to a fine like an unlicensed individual.
More like remind them of their duty rather than hold a hammer over them.
I think you're correct. So all I would say is to the inspectors, if you don't want it to lead to that, get on board and give us some help. Because I'm going to tell you, that's where I'm headed. When an inspector thumbs their nose at us, says, I ain't got time to mess with unlicensed activity. I see it all the time, but I'm not messing with it. Then I'm going to tell you, and from my perspective, they're putting their own license in jeopardy. So we want their help. We appreciate their help. We understand they're overworked, but they're going to have to fulfill their obligations under their license, just like everyone else has to do. And don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm not saying go out and start finding all these inspectors, but I'm going to tell you at some point it's going to lead to that. If we see a total disregard of their responsibility, then I don't think we have an alternative, to be honest with you. So let's hope it doesn't come to that. But anyway, enough said. Anyone else have any comments about unlicensed activity or? Okay. Close the subject, but it'll be on next month's agenda also. We will still discuss it because it is a #1 priority for the industry, and as such is the #1 priority for our board. Let's move now to Kenneth and a report of our Legislative Appropriation Request, which is fast approaching. I think our deadline for submitting this is Friday.
Yes, sir.
Thanks to Kenneth prodding Lisa and I and all the rest of the staff. We think we were ready to go 4 days early. Lisa told me it's the first time in her career that she's done one in it before it was the absolute drop dead due date. So you will notice if you flip through your board packet, and I think it's found on tab 3, we have got an awful large ask and maybe the largest request that we have ever asked for at the plumbing board. It's about a 24% increase in our base revenue. It's roughly about $1 million a year additional funds we're asking for. And I believe that we need and deserve every penny of it, not a dime less. So we have, and the way I look at it is this. 2 years ago, the legislature gave us some specific charges that they wanted us to address and fix at the plumbing board. We were coming off a very detrimental sunset report. And if you look at the work of the agency and Lisa and her staff, we have complied with and fixed every single item on the sunset report. There is not one thing on the sunset report that's not completed. We have done everything required of House Bill 636, including our rules with respect to licensing people that are completing the educational program. We have we've done it all. And as such, we have worked out to address the backlog. We've entered into an interagency agreement with TSTC, who has built us and committed $3 million to build us testing centers, one in Waco, one in Harlingen, and a mobile unit through an interagency agreement. We have moved mountains to comply with House Bill 636 and address some of the issues. And we now need to complete the job. You can't build facilities and make a $3 million capital expenditure without having the plumbing examiners and the staff to run those things. So that's is a large part of what we're asking for, is personnel to man those testing centers. Because when we get to Lisa's report, she's going to tell you some really exciting, wonderful things about her computer-based testing. And I don't want to steal Lisa's thunder, other than to say this. End of September, the 1st of October, there's going to be a 1-week turnaround on getting a test. If you supply the application and it's complete, you've done your fingerprint, you've sent your photographs, you've done everything that's required, I anticipate a 10-day turnaround for you to get an examination. So all of our focus of the examination staff in about 6 weeks is going to move to doing the practical examinations. Because as we ramp up and as we eliminate that 600-person backlog taking the written tests, it's going to put pressure on us to ramp up our practical examinations. But the timing is perfect. Within a couple of weeks, we're going to be operating 2 testing centers. Lisa and the examination staff are working and reviewing everything we're doing in the test to check the possibility. And I'm not saying we're going to do it, but we're going to check the possibility of putting 2 shifts of people through every day. Start at 8 in the morning and do some between 8 and noon, and the next group between 1 and 5, a 4-hour period of time. We're not ready on that yet, and we certainly are going to enlist the support and the advice from our examination staff of how we can do that. But we have a plan in place once we get this written examination completely over to computer-based testing to really ramp up 2 locations, Austin and Waco, and really start putting out some practical examinations. So I'm going to fulfill the promise that I made a lot of people. January the 1st, there will be no backlog to take a test. So that's going to happen. And I think it might happen before then. But we've given ourselves a 30 or 60 day reprieve. But Kenneth, thank you so much. Putting together a legislative appropriation request is no small task. It's hard enough to try to come up with an ask list of things that you want, but put it in the form that the state requires it, which makes hardly any sense to anyone except maybe Kenneth, is a monumental task. And we're awful fortunate to have a guy like Kenneth that's been there and done that, and he knows exactly what to do. He also knows to push us to make sure we're doing it in plenty of time to get it submitted timely. And allow me to make some changes, which I made some this morning as recently as 2 hours ago. And so Kenneth, thanks. And if you will kind of walk us through what our legislative appropriation request is going to look like.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I am Kenneth Biddle, the Director of Financial Operations, for the record. So last time we talked and we had a chance to meet, I kind of walked everybody through the legislative process and where we were with the base reconciliation and getting a base number so we could determine what our exceptional items were. So about 2.5 weeks ago, we got that base number. We were given $5.8 million for the 2024-25 biennium, which is basically what we got in 2022 and 23, carried forward to 24 and 25. So we're working with the same thing to start out with. So once we get that number, we sit down and determine, okay, we continue operating within the budget we've got. What else do we want to do that we're going to have to request additional money for? So we sat down, we came up with a list of about originally 6 or 7 items. Based on those discussions we were having this morning, we're cutting that down to 5 items and we're reducing one of those items a little further. So if you look at your tab 3, you'll see the list of exceptional items, and I'm going to talk about the ones that are still on the table as of this morning. And for everybody's reference, you're all going to get copies of a hard copy, one of these, but this is what my draft LAR looks like. Right now, it's sitting at approximately 110, 115 pages. It's going to be a little smaller than that based on some of the discussions we have, but all we're telling the legislature here is how we're going to spend the money we got in our base money, and then what do we want for additional money. That's basically your LAR. So most of what I focus on is trying to create those schedules, telling the legislature what we're going to spend and what we'd like them to give us in additional money. So the big part of the board in this is talking about those exceptional items, again, on tab 3. So I'm going to go ahead and skip past the first item on that list based on some discussions we had this morning. So let's go to item number 2. In this item, we're asking for 6 additional FTEs. We're asking for a system support specialist, an HR specialist, a customer service rep, an investigator, a legal assistant, and an examiner. Total biennial cost for that exceptional item is about $715,000. The next item, item 3 on the list, is staff pay raises. Well, we sat down and talked about a good number. And we're looking at year-over-year inflation in the United States right now of about 9.1% from 2021 to 2022. So we're looking at probably giving our staff about a 10% raise. We're anticipating this is going to be a legislative item across the state, but we're still going to put our cards on the table and say our staff need pay raises to keep up with inflation and cost of living adjustments in Austin. Item number 4, agency vehicles. We pared this down from 2 vehicles originally to 1 vehicle. My estimated cost on this is going to be $48,000 instead of the $83,000 listed. Item number 5 is the build out of our Harlingen facility for examinations, staffing our Waco and Harlingen facilities, and operating costs for our Waco and Harlingen facilities in FY24 and 25. We're asking for 3 new FTEs, 1 program specialist, 3, 2 maintenance specialists to assist with operations at those sites. Total estimated biennial cost for that is $463,000. And the last item is our VRSA regulatory application upgrades that we're doing with the Health Professionals Council. We're asking for $25,000 per year for a 2-year project to work with the HPC to update our IT education programs, tracking and accessibility for our stakeholders and constituents into our VRSA system. And that's basically what we're asking the board to approve, is those 5 exceptional items, less exceptional item number 1 on your list, and exceptional item number 4 on your list is down from $83,000 to $48,000.
A little bit of explanation as to why we made those. Item number 1 included our lease for this building that we're in now that we examined is up for renewal in 23, right?
23, yes, sir.
We had put in an exceptional item trying to anticipate what that amount of increase or what it was going to cost us going forward. And I don't think we have a crystal ball. And I also don't want to, we don't actually handle the negotiations for the lease of our building. That's handled by another state agency called the Texas Facilities Commission. And I say that because a lot of you have not been a part of a state agency, but we don't directly handle that. So I don't want to plug a number in as a part of our appropriations, because we're basically, if we plug a number in, we're saying, well, it's okay with us if you increase it 15% or 20% or 30%. I want it to go down. So I don't want to let the Facilities Commission off the hook by telling them a number that we're okay with, or our landlord a number that we're okay with. So I think it's inappropriate for us to put something in there. Now, something's going to have to go in. We get an increase, which we probably will, some amount. We'll have to revise our legislative appropriation request. But I don't think we need to look in a crystal ball and anticipate what that's going to be, because by doing that, we're telling the landlord and the Facilities Commission, as long as you stay below this number, it's okay. And whenever you do that, they come in 10 cents under the number that you put out there. So we took that off. That was one issue. Yes, sir, Mr. Don.
And I don't disagree with that. I think, you know, obviously this will be a matter of public record. And so the landlord could go in and look and see what we budgeted for lease and, yeah, come in 10 cents under that or 1 cent under that or whatever. But if we do strike this from the exceptional items right now, how difficult is it to add that back later if we do have an increase in rent?
I won't say I did. There's nothing that can't be done. It's just people that don't know how to do it, and Kenneth knows how to do it. So
what's going to
be done? You want to, how will that work, Kenneth?
What's going to happen in about January? The LBB is going to release a proposed budget, and then the House will release the House Appropriations budget, and the Senate will release the Senate Finance budget. And then they're going to consider all this stuff, and they're going to say, okay, now look, based on the budgets is introduced, what do agencies want to do? Do you want to change your exceptional items? Do you want to add any, subtract any, change anything? Because they may give us some of our exceptional items based in the funding. They may not. They may take some of our money away, and we may have to address it again later and say, okay, we still need this money for whatever reason. This is our chance to go ahead and ask for any other additional exceptional items we want to add or take away or modify or whatever the case may be. And it'll be about February of 2023, February, March 2023.
And hopefully we'll have a better picture of where we are on that lease in February. So we're just trying not to show our hand right now. If I put anything in it from a negotiation standpoint, I'd put in a negative 10% on the rent. So.
On the other note, I noticed I didn't even know when we first occupied this building. I'm sure it was decades and decades ago.
1981.
So the other thing on the list is we're adding people, and which is great. We're adding staff. And I mean, even with adding staff, I think we need more staff. With that in mind, has the staff looked at the building? Is this the building we need for the next 20 years? If the lease is up, maybe it's time we evaluate parking, we evaluate office space, we evaluate the stuff, because every time I've come here, it's been a battle for parking. Y'all are squished in here like sardines. And does this building meet the needs of this commission over the next 2 decades? Based, because this is, according to that, it said an 8-year lease, I guess, is what we're going for. So is this the time to look at the possibility that maybe this facility doesn't meet that, which is a great negotiating point, but going forward, what do we need? Where are we going to add more people, more parking?
Let me respond to a little bit of that. I think it's a great point. And it is a good negotiating point. And I want to say something that was said to me in public, so I don't mind repeating it. I'm not even going to say it. Never mind. To answer your question, it is a good point. I think this building is probably adequate, and I will say it for this reason. We're getting out of the written testing business. So that large area out there that's reserved for people with desks to sit down and take written examinations can be converted to office space if we need to expand our office space. I think it's adequate, but without going into any detail, we do have options of another building. But I think we are going to go into this and we're going to stay right where we are, provided the lease is acceptable and reasonable. I believe it to be adequate for what we need, but we do have options that I'll talk about later, but I don't want to suggest that we're fixed to move because I don't have any intention of doing that if we can work it out. So
I will say that they've studied more than one time what it would take to move us. And there's a lot of agencies that have moved from downtown Austin to the new further, the Bush complex, and they didn't even invite us to go there because there's never a place to put us. But I think we can manage it for a while. Parking hasn't always been, always will be probably a problem, but they've studied it and there's just not a great place to move us to.
You know, one of the things that's kind of neat about this place, we got a lot of free parking, even out on the street, that's not available to people downtown. So it's not a bad location. It's pretty centrally located. Our employees don't have to pay for parking, and even our visitors can park out on the street for free. And that's legal. So it's a manageable location. Again, having to do with the parking issue. Think about the number of people that are no longer going to come to Austin and take a written test. There's not going to be any need for their parking. That's going to give us a little bit of relief in the parking. The parking lot's full today because we've got a full group of applicants back here taking tests. Once we start testing at 2 locations, one in Waco and one here, maybe we'll get a little relief on the parking situation. But I think it's a point well taken. It's something we probably should not discuss those types of matters to put the Facilities Commission in a bad light to do the negotiation with the landlord. But just bottom line, we do have options if it can't be worked out. So the other item that I will mention that we revised, and I did this morning, we have asked in our original LAR for 3 vehicles. One, a replacement vehicle that we anticipate is going to have 150,000 miles on it by the time. Keep in mind, this money that we're talking about is not money we're going to get right now. If we got everything we wanted, it wouldn't happen until September of 23. Is that right? Basically a year and 2 months from now, and it runs into 25. So we're still operating on the same budget we had the last 2 years. So we're looking pretty far out down the road. We've looked up enough people to staff both testing centers, but on the vehicle side, we had an extra vehicle in there that was basically a backup vehicle that I removed because a lot of agencies play games with the legislature. They pile on everything but the kitchen sink in hopes for paring it back. But our ask is so big, and I'm not willing to give a penny back. If they ask me to negotiate, it's non-negotiable in my mind. Now, if they want to cut it back, it's within their authority to cut it back, regardless of what we say. But I think we should ask for exactly what we need and exactly what we want in order to put this agency back on sound footing for years and years to come. And if you want to cut us back, legislator, cut us back. But don't bitch to us that we're not doing what you ask us to do. That's kind of my position on it. So I don't want to ask for anything that I don't feel absolutely critical, up to and including an increase for our employees. I mean, Austin is the most expensive place in the state to live, and we got employees commuting as far as South Austin and 20 miles north of Austin, and gasoline is doubled in price. And our state employees remain the same. The likelihood of this granting us the authority to individually give 10% to all of our employees across the board, probably not that great. More than likely, they'll take this request along with every state agency that's requesting increases and put it into one pile and give an across the board increase to all state employees. But that doesn't stop us from asking for it. And it's a number one priority for us is to take care of the employees we've already got. They have worked really, really, really hard to try to get this agency back and address some of the concerns the legislature had. And we owe it to them to ask for an increase for them. So we did. So any other questions or comments? Bill?
Yes, I have a little bit of, it's probably a question to staff. We've been concerned about the quality of the vehicles that we have. Is this really going to take care of us, or do we really need that extra vehicle? Because, you know, since I've been on the board, you know, there's been some of the existing vehicles that are questionable at best.
Lisa, I'll let you answer that. I've already asked them to take off an extra vehicle that was kind of a backup vehicle. The one that we're asked to replace, we anticipate having 150,000 miles on it. And that's well within the guidelines that it's recommended by the state to rotate a vehicle out. The other vehicle we requested goes along with a new investigator that we're adding. So when you add an investigator, you need a vehicle for them. So Lisa, any more comments about that?
Well, I want to say we do a really good job because we've been put in position to do so, of tying them together and keeping them running and looking as good as they can and still trying to follow the guidelines, but you don't always get what you ask for. So you exceed what those recommended replacement values are. But the other thing that occurred this time, and it's hard to guess that whether it's going to change or happen again, but we had 2 big hailstorms. We had disasters that totaled out 2 vehicles. We had an accident that totaled a vehicle. And so we have to, you know, make moves whenever that happens. And then we turned around, we ordered a vehicle, and we just, that order's over a year ago. We just got that car last week, and it's not exactly the car we wanted, but it does run and it's nice to drive.
And I will add, our last LAR, our last legislative appropriation request, we requested 2 vehicles and we were approved 2 vehicles. One of which we just took delivery on.
We just got
the other
it.
one's still ordered. So,
and we just have to hope nothing happens. And we don't keep them any longer than we absolutely have to, but we do the best we can to make them last as long as we can too.
May I?
Sure.
I was going to say,
Mhm.
just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, we want to make sure that we understand that the vehicle we just got is not the 2 we still got money for. We're still ordering 2 more. So we're going to have 3 new vehicles either on order or received this year.
Yeah. Maybe not received, but
on order,
maybe
on order or received.
We hear what you're saying. We're not waiting on the wheels to fall off of them before we ask for them. So I think that's what you're telling us.
If staff is comfortable, I'm comfortable. I've just been listening to complaints about it, so I just wanted to bring it up.
Well, everybody wants a new car, including me, but I can't afford one, and neither can the agency. So I'll put it that way.
And we certainly would not put anyone in anything that is not safe. We do have the one that we refer to that it's not so pretty, but it's still runs good.
Well, what I've got is I've got 209 Impalas. One sits out here, one's in Corpus, running that area.
Yeah, the headphones.
Got 209 Impalas, and one of them is out here, and it's the one that we refer to as the Deer Slayer. And then we got one in Corpus that is running, you know, the South Texas region. I just pulled back an 11 Impala that was having some transmission issues. And so that field investigator is running the El Paso area in the 2013 Tahoe. So like I said, I've got some that are, you know, we're either gonna have to put some money into repairs or look at, you know, doing some replacements.
We've got a line on 2 that we may be able to get you at least one more, we're hoping.
Any other discussion about our legislative appropriation request or comments or questions?
Chairman, I've got one. Mr. Middle, over. You get back to the page there. On line item 5, talking about the Texas Workforce Commission's JET program. Mr. Chairman, you may be able to help with this too, but would the appropriations for the examination center cost fall in that grant program with the JET program for helping with that with TSTC?
I don't think so, because we're not an educational institution.
Well,
Those grant programs are intended for educational institutions, and not being one. It might, I think TSTC would qualify for it, but I don't think we would as a state agency.
Right, that would be my question. If TSTC submits for that grant request for the JET program and they receive it, would that place that money back into the general fund that's not used, or?
Well, I tell you what, Brian Daniels and Mike Reeser and I are going to be in the same room on tomorrow, and I'll ask that question. I sure will.
And TSTC did do a lot of the build out of the facility, but we have our part where we have to specifically address the plumbing equipment and plumbing supplies. So there's going to be about a $35,000 cost to build out this hardware facility. And the operating cost of handling it and our normal operating supplies for pipe.
So our normal operating supplies is going to be about $15,000 to $20,000 a year for pipe, other materials for actually administering the exams. That's going to be on us like it is right now. So they are receiving some federal funds, is what I understand, to help build out the Waco facility to where they hand it over to us. But from that point on, it becomes our cost.
But that's a good question. It's an excellent question. But we need, on these testing centers, we need some skin in the game on that program. TSTC has done above and beyond the call of duty in building out, spent a lot of money on us. But Mike Reeser and I talked about it. It's really important that we have somewhat of an arm's length transaction going forward. We are responsible for the examination. We are responsible for the materials we use to examine people, because our state agency is responsible for the testing and the approval of these applicants going through there, not TSTC. So we have to kind of draw a line. We need to do our part, and what we put in the legislative appropriation request is what we consider to be our part of the larger picture. So, any other questions or comments before I ask for a motion to approve our legislative appropriation request? All done? Is there a motion then to approve our legislative appropriation request as submitted?
Dave Yolovic, so moved.
Mr. Yolovic, thank you. Is there a second?
Ron Ainsworth, second.
Mr. Ainsworth, seconds. Any further or final discussion or question? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We've been going about an hour and 15 minutes. Let's recess for about 10 minutes for a short break, and we'll pick it back up at 11:25. Which is a pretty good deal. And Lisa is walking in, and I'm about to turn this over to Lisa as she walks into the room. One of the things, going back to this unlicensed activity, and we were having some discussion here a minute ago among a group of the audience about advertising and being sure to advertise that you are employing licensed plumbers. One of the greatest things that a consumer should realize when they hire a licensed plumber, so far we have done criminal background checks on over 17,000 licensed plumbers. That's a huge thing for a consumer inviting someone into your home, is to know that they have completed a criminal history background check. So one of the huge advantages, and we ought to be touting as employers of licensed plumbers, that our plumbers have been fingerprinted and had a background check. You hire some jackleg with the plumbing sign on his truck, you don't know what his criminal history is or what his motivation is for getting into your home. So all that's a part of consumer education. And I just hope that our employers will pick up on that and run with it. Lisa, we're down to item number 9, your report. It's about 11:30. And if you will time your presentation to where we'll break for a lunch whenever you get to a break point. I don't anticipate you being done in 30 minutes or 40 minutes. But if you'll just pick the point that you want to break for lunch, when you pick that point, we will take like a 40 or 45 minute break for lunch and then resume back with you when we finish. So Lisa, it's all yours.
Thank you, sir. I already talked earlier about the town hall meetings, but I did want to make mention too, as far as our staff duties and things that we have going on. We've got a multitude of positions open and posted out on our website. And we ask that everybody continue to tell anyone you know that might be interested in working here what we have available. It is a great place to work, if I do say so myself. Anyway, but we do have 2 new people that we recently hired, and one of them is Brennan, who is our new receptionist. And we've moved Naomi into another position who was the receptionist. And we also have another fingerprint individual that's doing those fingerprint analyst and doing the fingerprint reviews, and that is Chris. So those 2 people are new face. You see them walking around, and we think we made good choices, and we're really excited to have them. So, but we need some more. So, the other thing I wanted to mention is we've had some town halls, and we had plumbers, and we've had different meetings. We've tossed around the idea, and we really want to do this. We want to have a Zoom meeting with the plumbing company staff. Those are the people that our staff interact with, the people that renew the licenses and call us for their plumbers and so on and so forth. So Kevin's going to be sending out a survey just to see how much people would be interested in doing that. And we're going to send it to the company managers or whoever. And if they have staff members that want to join, we're going to try to pick a day, do a big Zoom meeting, invite staff, and answer their questions on how do you submit something? What's the best way to pay? You know, do we take this via email? Whatever those questions are, the questions that we get over and over again from company staff. So we anticipate that to hopefully happen as soon as Kevin hurries and gets that survey out. We anticipate in the next month or so that we'll have some kind of staff Zoom training meeting, just some additional outreach for the admin support. So we're kind of excited about doing that. Everyone's done really well on the transition on the CE program. Mr. Denton mentioned earlier, we're not going to hold everybody's feet to the fire about this, but they're doing well. We had some snags on the program itself, on the upload of CE credits, on the upload of CE training. I mentioned earlier that some of the agencies are actually moving from a location downtown. And when one of those agencies moved, they actually had to relocate the server that we use to upload our CE training and our CE credits. And so we had some downtime and things didn't go just as planned. So we had some additional downtime, but I think we're for the most part caught up. But if you have someone that is concerned or doesn't see their training on the website under their license or doesn't see their CE, reach out to us. We'll get it corrected. I'm pretty confident we got most everyone caught up and brought back up to speed. And at that same time, the reports that run through that server for our license cards were also involved in all of that. So there may be some people that didn't get a card as quick as they normally would, but it was about a 2 to 3 week hump to get over all this move and up and running. And so it's been resolved. They did a good job, but they had some things that they didn't anticipate, so to speak. And with that, and we have this meeting with admin staff and we do these updates to CE. We also have some updates to the program that the user, the plumber, the registrant or whatever, that the user to do their renewals, to do their license applications, those updates to that program in October will have a little bit of downtime, but whenever they go back up with these new items, one of the things that we're really excited about, and I'm not going to swear to you exactly how it's going to work, but we've seen it. We haven't tested it all yet. Our ability to put a more user-friendly note in there to tell you what you're deficient in. So it's going to be more like a little message box in their accounts, and you'll click on it and it'll say, hey, we need a photo ID or we need a birth certificate or whatever it is. So we hope that that will expedite some of these applications where people have submitted them, but yet they're not going back and looking at their deficiencies on the application. This will be more readily available and it'll be more visible, we hope. So that's coming in October. We're kind of excited about that, Dawn and I are, and we'll be able to tell more or show it as we move along. I wanted to make mention of the reciprocity efforts that we've been working on, and we have made some headway in reciprocity. Of course, currently we have reciprocity with Louisiana, and I believe at last count, I had somewhere around 20 of those applicants that are either processed and or processing from Louisiana for journeyman licenses. But currently Colorado is interested. New Mexico is very interested. We have a meeting on Friday, I think it is, and Lynn and I and GW will be meeting with them to kind of go over some stuff. Oregon is interested, and Utah is extremely interested. Utah will be an easy one to do because they have a very thorough practical and written exam. So currently we still haven't got a response from Hawaii. We don't know why, but we tried. Arkansas, we are in the process of finalizing that agreement, and Arkansas and some of the other states that we're looking at, our agreements may have to be modified a bit because some of the states do not have what I'm going to use the word thorough of a practical exam as Texas does. And so we're looking at it kind of as an equalizer, that maybe you held your license a longer period of time. That would be equivalent to a portion of the practical exam. So we're in negotiation. We've got a lot going on that. And we hope to have some finalized agreements next board meeting, in particular Arkansas. And since they're a neighboring state, we do get a lot of overlap from Arkansas. So
let me add something there. I think it's under tab 5, you'll see a draft of the Arkansas reciprocity agreement. The components that you'll find in that are very similar to the Louisiana reciprocity agreement, with the exception of they do not have a practical exam in Arkansas. So what they have substituted, and Arkansas has agreed to it, and I think it's a good idea. Lynn, Lisa, and GW and the examination staff determined that if you have held that journeyman license in Arkansas for 4 years, come on down and we'll issue a journeyman's license. If you've received a journeyman's license in Arkansas and held it for a year, come on down, but you're going to have to take the practical exam. So the difference is that if they have practiced as a journeyman in Arkansas for 4 years, not necessary to take the test. If you received your license for practice less than 4 years, you're still welcome to come down, but you will be required to take our practical exam. So I thought it was a good fix, Lynn and Lisa. The way this will work, if you recall, we don't have the authority to enter into a reciprocity agreement. It's subject to the approval of the governor. So what will happen when these get finalized between Arkansas, say for instance, Arkansas, it'll come back to us. I would encourage you to look at the reciprocity agreements in your book. And if it's missing something or something you think is not correct, talk to Lynn about that, because she is currently working with the folks in Arkansas to try to get this finalized. When she's done with that, it'll come back before the board, and our board will formally approve it as a document, and it'll be sent over to the governor, and subject to his approval will go into effect when he signs it. So take a look at what's in your packet. If there's anything that's in there that shouldn't be there, bring it to Lynn's attention, or if there's something that's not in there that you think should be included, mention that to her also. But you will get another bite out of the apple before it goes to the governor's office.
I also wanted to add on the our discussion about the examinations, and I'm probably going to do all the statistical part of the exams after lunch. But we currently have a contract for the translation of the journeyman and tradesman examinations, and as soon as we get the journeyman and the tradesman examinations translated, then we'll be ready to load those into Pearson's system, and we'll be able to offer those two items in Spanish. The other thing that we're currently working on updating in Spanish are the apprentice application and the employer certification form. Those are the two things we get the most questions on, and we get a lot of questions in Spanish about those two items. So, and once we get those done, they'll be up on the website. So it ought to help move things along.
Lisa, we got a question up here.
Sir?
Are those being translated into academic Castilian Spanish or the actual Spanish that's spoken in Texas?
They're actually getting translated into what they deem, and based on all of our research, is Mexican Spanish.
Great. Thank you.
Not Castilian. We're coming away from the Castilian.
Glad to hear that.
Yes.
That's a complaint I've consistently gotten. Thank you.
And then we will test them on several people that work here. See what we come up with. So, and they sent us some sample writing, and we took those around to a couple of staff members, and whenever we were looking at the different dialects and so on, and we think we got it this time. We'll see. Very exciting. The other item I wanted to say is, it's currently all the staff here. We're handling over, I mean, we're at 101,499. 101, little over 101,000 different licenses that we handle. It's a lot of different licenses. Our warm bodies have increased, but the number of different types of licenses that people are interested in getting, the endorsements, all those things, it just continues to move forward. And not knowing exactly how this economy is going to go, I suspect we really are not going to experience a whole lot of slowdown for us. We're going to keep processing licenses. We're going to keep processing exams, and we're going to keep needing staff, and as we explained in the LAR. So pretty exciting.
Lisa, can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Of that 101 or 75,000 individuals, do you have any idea what percentage have complied with the fingerprint?
The 17,000, if you want to do the math really quick, let's see, there were 17,778, I think. That relates to warm bodies. And so do the math on that, Kenneth, for 75,000, whatever. I said earlier, let me give you. It's probably about 3%, to tell you the truth, just off the top of my head.
It's 17,000 of what?
Yeah, out of 75, and I want to back up too.
23%.
Yeah, 23%, somewhere in there. And that number, that includes journeymen and apprentices and masters. It's a mix. And we did institute the requirement for the apprentices that hold the endorsements. So those have just been coming in left and right. They're getting their fingerprints done as well. So.
Well, the reason I asked after the town hall meeting, I had to go do mine because I had not done it. Aha. But the agency Identigo told me that they were just having a mass run on plumbers coming in. So I just and I said, well, we're out front of the other trades because they're all going to be coming eventually.
We actually started our program in 2018. It's no small feat to put that program together and get connected with DPS, FBI, the programs, the training. It's a lot of work. And so we're able to actually offer our expertise to other agencies because we've been on the cutting edge of it since 2018. But yeah, we've had a big rash of it. And the other thing we've recently done is on the bottom of most everyone's email. I think Kevin's got this working. It actually has the link to how you get fingerprints done and go into Identigo and all that stuff. So it's like it's in your face. You gotta do it.
It's very simple.
Yeah. So how long did it take you? I'm just curious to go in and out of there. Five minutes, 10 minutes.
We're not gonna ask you how you did.
It was less than 10 minutes, but
really?
You have to schedule an appointment. You just don't walk in. So
yeah,
schedule an appointment and it's relatively quick.
Good, good. I'm glad that went well.
You know, I will say too.
There was no one coming to arrest me.
A long time ago, 18, and we statutorily, I believe.
As Lisa said, we started this in 2018, or they started in 2018. And I think statutorily we have until 2025
got turned around
to license all of our plumbers and apprentices. So we're ahead of the game. And if we keep on doing what we're doing, we should fulfill our requirement well within the time limit that's required of us.
2025, we should be fine.
One of the things, and this is kind of a funny thing, I might have said this the last board meeting, but it has to do with fingerprinting. Lisa was up here or at home or something checking the public comments one day, and we had a gentleman from the Panhandle just madder than a wet hen about having to go drive 40 miles to Identico to get his fingerprints done. And he was just going on the email about how he thought it was who were you in bed with to require Identico to do it and all that kind of stuff. That hell, I got a police station right across the street from me, and yet I had to drive. So anyway, as luck would have it, Lisa was looking at it. He sent it in at 10 o'clock, and I called him back at 10:15, telling him we got his email and we want to apologize for his displeasure, and talked for him probably 30 minutes of why we used Identico. And it's a good question for everyone. Why don't you just use the fingerprint number one that you did when you have your concealed handgun license? Why don't you let the local police station or the sheriff's office do it? They don't have the capabilities of reporting to us in a timely manner in a form that we need in order to do those background checks. You can just imagine what a mess it would be if you had all sorts of documents coming in a different format from a local police station and a sheriff's office in Abilene, and it's not possible to do it. So we didn't pick Identico. The Department of Public Safety, as my understanding, are the ones that selected Identico to do this program, and we just signed on to it. But he was a nice gentleman. But the funny thing was, he said, I didn't think anybody ever read these general complaints that came in. And it just so happened Lisa saw it and called me and gave me his number, and I called him back 15 minutes on Saturday morning. So he was kind of thrilled about it. Lisa and I were laughing. He was an older gentleman. And so many times with the older guys, their fingerprints are worn so bad that it doesn't take. And we just hoped and prayed that he didn't drive 40 miles and have to repeat it because his fingerprints were worn off. But apparently he made it through. And Ronna, I guess you made it through too. I put you as an older gentleman. So you did well. So Lisa, I'm sorry I didn't mean to get off track.
That's okay. I just want to make sure I don't forget anything. I've got so many different items on here. Oh, the other thing I wanted to talk about let me back up to CE and TSTC and education classes and instructors. And we have our program modified to meet this exemption. There's actually an exemption for educators. And I'm going to use the word educator to distinguish people that teach in the career programs and the colleges as an educator versus an instructor. You might have a CE instructor that is a CE instructor and an educator. But the individuals that are educators that are participating in some of these, the career programs and the school districts and that sort of thing, we're going to be able to provide an exemption for their renewal fee and for their CE every year while they're teaching. But they have to demonstrate to us that they're actually doing that instructing. So there's a form coming that has qualifiers on it, and then they'll get that completed by someone of authority, and they'll send that back into us, and we'll be able to tag them as an educator that's entitled to an exemption. So if you know someone that's an educator or planning to be an educator, make sure that we get with them and that they follow up on this. It's relatively new, but it'll be a helpful thing to those that are going and teaching. So
Lisa, we've not talked about this, and this is always dangerous when I start bringing up things that you and I hadn't talked about. But I see from my perspective that exemption applying to those instructors and educators who are involved in the approved curriculum that will lead to a tradesman license, that are teaching in high school, teaching in trade school. Just because you teach a plumbing course on the side at the local community college does not provide you an exemption to CE. It's specifically provided for in 636 that it applies to those instructors who are involved in teaching the approved curriculums for high schools and trade schools. So don't let it be. That's what I see.
You're correct.
That's the way you see it also.
Yeah, there's actually reference to it in 2 or 3 different sections of 636, and we've got to take all of those, and of course council's going to put them all together. And yeah, that was one of our questions, is we still got to define meaningful education.
And we're going to be pretty lenient on that, because 636 does require that you have a journeyman or a master plumber affiliated with the program, but it does not necessarily mean that you teach school 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. You may act as a consultant, or you may act as an advisor to a high school or a trade school to make sure that their curriculum is meaningful and real world experience. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to teach the course.
And I suspect, and Lynn and I talked about it a little bit, but by the time we get this form done and spell out all the qualifiers and all these different things, we may even end up with some rule adjustment. She'll
maybe
update us on it sooner or later, but maybe. I suspect there's going to be quite a few folks that.
But the whole purpose of it, and we want to make sure that our rules and our practices support the intent of the legislation. It's to encourage plumbers to get involved in education for students in high schools and trade schools that lead to the ability to take that tradesman exam. It's provided for an incentive, and it does not go beyond those who teach plumbing on the side or teach a course at the community college It's specific for those that are, it's a benefit for those who are helping promote that program that was provided for in 636.
Mhm.
So it'll have to be specific enough that it covers those, and specific enough it's not so broad that everybody that teaches plumbing gets it. So
Yeah, we'll go back and we can hash it out some. I think one of the things we were looking at was basically the number of hours. I believe it says, doesn't it say volunteer too, or they may be able to volunteer? So, yeah.
we'll
The
figure
total
out a
number of
way
hours.
and be pretty lenient about it. If they're legitimately involved in a high school or trade school program that is brought about because of 636, we're going to be pretty lenient about it, because we want it to be the incentive it was intended to be, to get plumbers involved in education. So we're going to be pretty lenient, but we're also not going to be taken advantage of either. So
Right. And I think, well, Sam, they still have, are they still doing classes in Taylor?
They've been asked me to teach a class or to kind of oversee it, so I'm trying to catch up with you guys, what you're saying.
Yeah, for instance, I think Sam's going to end up in that category, Sam Dowdy. And it just came to mind because I'm looking over at you and I'm thinking of Taylor, and that's why that kind of came to mind. So, and so he'll be, we may have a discussion about what all he does. So,
all right, Sam, you got it on tape now. You're home free, it sounds to be like.
mhm.
There's an advantage to showing up. So.
I also wanted to mention, and we discussed this, we bring this up on a regular basis, but we continue to have a pretty good size population of veterans that are part of our licensee population. Journeymen, we get journeymen out of the Navy. We get people that work on aircrafts, we get sub plumbers, we get CBs, we get everything. And so right now we currently have 833 people, veterans in our population. And I just had one the other day that has done nothing but plumbing the whole time that he was in, and he was out and sent me his DD 214 and all of his documents. It was very well organized. So if you have someone that has done a portion of plumbing or spent their whole career in the service, get with us. It's a popular trade, popular career path. So, hence, does anybody else have any questions along those lines?
You know, but before you leave the numbers of plumbers, Lisa, I think it's significant in our tab 4, you'll see a chart that shows these are actually individuals. These are not licenses, these are individuals. And from August of 20 to June of 22, we have gained 2,513 individuals that have gotten a license, increased the numbers by that much, which I think is a pretty good number. And I think you're going to see that number really ramp up once these training programs and high school programs and trade school programs take fruition. 2 to 3 years from now, you're going to really see a ramp up in that. They're going to take care of the future needs of plumbers, which underlines why we have got to get proficient in computer-based testing, and we've got to get proficient in getting these new testing centers in Waco and Harlingen up to speed. It is imperative that we do that, because if we don't do that, we're going to find ourselves in the same mess we were in 3 or 4 years ago with a backlog of people waiting to take it. And I don't intend to be here when that happens. So that's why we need the money we're asking for. We're trying to get out ahead of the curve that's coming. And I think that we have accomplished that through our legislative appropriation request. And excuse me for digressing, but when I talk about our LAR, we're talking about increasing our budget by roughly just under $1 million per year. We don't currently have the sufficient funds. We don't raise enough money to do that. One of two things is going to have to happen, and board members be prepared for this. Either we're going to get a new industry or a new set of licensees this next legislative session that's going to provide us that additional revenue, or we're going to have to relook at our license base for a rate increase to cover that $1 million. Kenneth, you can tell me, but I think we're bumping right up against where what we're allowed to spend right now without exceeding our revenue. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Depending on how revenues shake out, we have a couple $100,000 of extra room right now.
But I'm going to tell you, it's getting pretty close. We used to have $2 million that went to the general fund. We don't have that anymore. Because you might recall, we reduced the master plumber license by about $120 a couple of years ago, and that cost us $1 million. So be prepared, but it's not the end of the world. Either we'll pick up some additional licensees in this legislative session, which may or may not happen. But let's say that it doesn't. A $10 increase for all licensing fees across the board will take care of us. We've got 70-something thousand, 75, 76,000 licensees. You hit that times $10, and that's almost $1 million a year right there. So it's not going to be substantial, but it's something that we are going to be required to do. We cannot spend money that we don't raise. So one way or another, we're going to have to raise that $1 million we're asking for. So at some future point, we were going to do a rule review, a fee review. And my suggestion at this point, if push came to shove, is let's spread it evenly across the board where nobody gets a substantial increase. We've done a lot of decreases, and I want to everybody keep this in mind. This computer-based testing has saved hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I'm not exaggerating. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars for plumbers who no longer have to travel and stay overnight in Austin, Texas to take their examination. They can drive down the street and stay at home and do it. So that's money that we don't see, and nobody's going to realize that savings except the person that experiences it. So when we talk about increasing your license fee by $10, always keep in mind the money that we're saving these plumbers by not having to travel to take that written exam anymore. That's big numbers. That's bigger than any licensing fee we ever thought about. We have totally eliminated the fee for renewal endorsements, which have saved our plumbers money. But at some point in time, we're going to have to balance it out. So keep it in mind that we cannot spend money that we don't raise. So if we don't pick up any additional licensees, we're going to have to go back to our licensing base, but it's not going to hurt. We're big enough now. We've got the critical mass that we can spread it evenly and no one gets hurt too bad. And I think it's well worth the money for the agency going forward and for the benefit of the plumbing industry, which they'll all benefit from. So sorry for digressing, but
no. Initially, not to go totally off into the computer-based testing, but there was a lot of people going, oh my gosh, I got to pay this other fee to the computer-based testing people, and you already collected this fee from me, and then I got to pay an initial fee. Oh my gosh, there was a lot of screaming and squealing. But whenever everybody settled down and realized, and we sent a little memo out during the transition period that there was adjustments in the fees. But once some of them realized it, I've had multiple calls saying, golly, with gas as high as it is, I was sure glad I didn't have to drive down there. Not that we didn't want to come see you, but they were glad. So I think we'll see that even more so as we progress through this. And once we transition the inspector and the master to computer-based, which has got a little ways to go, then you won't have those people traveling here either. And it's going to free up some room in the exam center. It's going to free up some dollars for them. And it's just, that's going to be the next big thing that's going to make it move much more smoothly and be much more economical for them. But you got to remember, whenever we cut out that and lowered that RMP fee, that was a big deal. That was a lot of money for us.
Yeah, but it was the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
It was the absolute right thing to do, because if there's anything that makes me mad is charging plumbers and it going into a deep hole that's who knows where it's spent with the state. There is no sense. I'm all for us bumping right up against what our appropriation is. I don't
we're
think
real
that we
close.
we ought to try to get as close as we can and not anymore. So,
Yeah.
and that's the way we'll try to keep going forward on this fee adjustment.
And if what's happening right now is any sign of that, and Kenneth and I are watching it really, really close, but I'm gonna tell you, my God, the apprentice applications coming in right now, there's a lot of jobs going and a lot of people employing apprentices, as well as the people that want to take exams, which is, we're trying to move through that transition. But I bet there was 40 apprentice apps on one day last week. Gloria came in there, she goes, "You ought to see this." And I'm like, wow, if that's the trend, and it takes a lot of time to process and enter those. I wish everybody would go online. It's so much faster. But if that's the trend, we've got a lot of people coming into this industry. So.
But even with that being said, we still got 90% of the people are renewing or applying online. Is that right?
Absolutely.
I think that's pretty cotton picking good in any industry.
We're bumping up. We're varying about 90 to 91.3 a couple of times, but yeah, it's pretty doggone good. Our online renewal is at or exceeds most agencies. That's how good we do. And right now we're working on, and we'll see it. It's a little more difficult, but as some of these good things occur in the program that they use, we're about 65%, 63, 65. We rock back and forth on the exam applications online. And that's still the fastest way to do the exam app. So I'm going to tell you, the plumbers have done great. I mean, some of this stuff it's been pulling teeth, we've been working on it for a while, trying to teach everybody, but it's coming together.
So big puzzle pieces coming into place. It really is.
And I'm happy to answer any other questions. I think I hit on my high points, and then I wanted to talk about the exam pass-fail reports, the number of exams, what everybody's doing, and what we got coming. I don't know if lunch is here yet or not.
It's here.
Oh, it is? Oh, okay, great. So I'm happy to do whatever. I can talk about exams.
Well, I tell you what, it's 10 after 12. Why don't we break here if it's all right with you, Lisa? And we'll pick up the computer-based testing. It's 10 after 12. Why don't we meet back here at 10 to 1, and we'll take it up with your finishing up your report. And board members and audience, I realize that some of this may be tedious, and maybe some of it is maybe even uninteresting to you, but it's really important for the public and for our board members especially to know every bit of the activity that's going on in the agency. We sit here for 2 or 3 hours and try to cover everything that's happened in 6 weeks, and we don't do it all. But I think for the board's benefit especially, you need to know what your staff is doing and the direction that we're going, and if we need a mid-course correction, we need to hear from you. So it's necessary, and we really appreciate the staff giving a detailed report of our activity, because it's who we are and it's what we do, and if we don't do it, you don't know what's going on. So that's what we're trying to do, is to make sure that the public and the board members are fully informed of everything we're doing at this agency. So yeah, I do too. Yeah. Questions, comments, or criticism, we're all about them. So okay, it's 10 after. We'll meet back. We'll recess until 10 minutes till 1 after lunch. Thank you, everyone. Minutes till 1. We've got a quorum present here. Just have one audio or visual issue that we're connecting. with Mr. Ainsworth. As soon as he gets connected, we'll get started again with Lisa. She does it to me all the time. I used to think I was in charge till I got muted about 10 times during my conversation. Then I figured out it's Dawn. Someone's really running this thing. She does. She does. Yeah. I'm just about to. No. Okay. Has to do with teaching school in connection with the House Bill 636 news program. Is everyone, are we still waiting on Ron?
Go ahead.
Fact of the matter is, we've got a quorum even without Ron, but Ron is here. So we have our staff and our board all back and biggest part of our audience. So Lisa, you want to pick it up where you left off and get on with computer-based testing? It's my favorite subject.
There we go. Okay. Computer-based testing. It's so far so good. It's going well. I'm going to tell you, we had, it was kind of a toss-up. I didn't know which bet to place, but I always bet on the plumbers. But I was very interested to see how the pass-fail rate was going to be on the exams going to computer-based testing. And I felt like, that they would be okay with it. And it seems to me that the first batch of computer-based testing individuals, they were the ones that were ready to go. They were on fire and, knew what they wanted to do, and their score did really good as far as the tradesmen. The journeymen also did pretty well. They stayed pretty consistent from the pass-fail on computer-based to from paper to computer-based. So that was kind of a learning lesson there as well.
And those statistics are in tab 7, if you want to follow
Yeah.
along.
Yeah.
Give you all the pass-fail rates.
And we've broken them down by type. It's that purple and green sheet that's there. But currently we've got about, and this changes every moment, but there's 148 that are sitting that need practical exams. As a matter of fact, I was talking to Sam a while ago. He's got 3 guys back there right now that are coming up for practical exams that already took the computer-based. And so, and just from the moment that I run one of these reports, which was 2 or 3 days ago, there could be 20 more that have taken that first part, that computer-based testing, and are going to be ready for the practical. Keep in mind that we're giving the tradesman and the journeyman practical exam here only, but come, and I hate to pick a day, but I'm going to, the 15th or 16th, that week of August, we anticipate that we're going to open Waco and put the first batch of Waco people there too. I also anticipate that because we have so many masters, all of a sudden, the master license is big news. Everybody wants to get that master license just as quick as they're eligible for it. And it's going to be a little bit before the master and inspector go on the computer-based. So I think what we're going to do is pick a couple of days and do another big group of master plumbers. So I hope they're ready, because when we're going to make this offering, we tried it once before and said, hey, we got a big old room here. We're ready. Everybody come take it that wants to take it. And it didn't get quite as big a crowd as I wanted, but we're looking at doing that because sooner or later, based on the number of exams we've got to get caught up on, if there's 148 practicals I need to do right now, there's 82 exams pending that need to be processed on the exams online. And there's just a ever constant flow of them coming in. At some point, we anticipate we may do a morning and an afternoon practical here, and maybe a morning and an afternoon practical in Waco. We're going to see how it all falls out. But, and I'm gonna agree with Mr. Denton that sooner or later there won't be any backlog. I mean, it's going to be totally on them. When we get the master and the inspector up and running, at that point, it's really totally on everybody else once you get that application. One of the hardest parts that staff still contends with is, even though we have a high percentage of applications being sent in online, they're not attaching all their documents. We've recently really tightened up the requirement on the application. You must attach this document here, and you must attach that one here. It won't let you move forward. And so that's helping to slow them down a little bit. But we've got, there's 100 sitting there right now that we need to go through. And out of that 100, there'll be 20 of them that hadn't even paid for anything, but they're sitting there in the pipeline, and they contribute to your number that you got to process. Or maybe they paid for everything, they attached their documents, but they haven't gotten their fingerprints done. So it's not going to move through, but they're in that pipeline. So a lot going on. Yes, sir.
I'm assuming that we don't have the capabilities to do everything, stops the process and doesn't let you go forward.
On some of the applications, it does. It's gotten to the point to where we put some hard stops in place.
Why could we not do it on all of it? One of the largest complaints, or most frequent complaints we get, is someone who sends them an application and never hears it.
Yeah.
And come to find out, you go back and look, and they didn't pay, or they didn't get their fingerprint.
Yep.
But we don't notify them.
Right.
There's no follow-up. And if we had a system in place where it would not allow you to submit it unless it was 100% complete, it would eliminate that.
And it's to that point right now. If they don't attach their photo ID and an apprentice, it won't process. If you don't attach your employer certification form on the tradesman and a photo ID and a birth certificate, and it tells you each little attachment, it's not going to process.
And it'll tell the applicant that it wasn't submitted, or
Yeah, it tells them unable to process, I think. What does it say? Unable to process? Something like that.
It won't let you progress.
Yeah, it just won't let you move from one to the other one. And they sit there and they click on it 3 or 4 times, but they must attach that document. And so whenever they move to the tradesman, they're still going to have a current photo ID. They still need their additional hours from, or I'm sorry, to the journeyman from the tradesman. They still need these additional hours, and it tells you to attach them, but it's stopping them right now. But there's all these applications that we've got to go through that don't have the solid stops on them.
That came in prior to us implementing these stops.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Some had stops and some didn't. Now pretty much everything has a stop on it.
That's great, because I tell you, that's one of the largest things that we hear is I submitted my application 2 months ago and I haven't heard a word. And we instruct them, we go to their account and they look at it and it's still sitting there because they didn't send their fingerprints in.
And for a year and a half, 2 years, they could look at the attachment in their account, but they will not look at that attachment in their account.
Well, a little bit like an old guy like me. Once I hit the button send, I forget about it.
Well,
I just assume it works. I just hit send.
that's why we won't let you hit that button anymore.
Well, that's what we need. That's exactly
Yeah.
what we need.
It won't let you hit the button anymore. But the other thing is if there's something that is specialized or we need an additional piece of information or something's not clear, bad form or whatever, this new message center I'm going to use the word message center, that's in the VO user application. This little message center is going to make it a whole lot better for us to say, hey, we need a better copy or a current copy or photo ID or whatever. Still need fingerprints. Hopefully that helps, because it doesn't stop them on fingerprints. That's the one thing that it does not stop. And the reason is because you need the open application in order for the fingerprint file to come in. So it's kind of a vicious deal, but so it's not going to stop them. But when we get ready to click approve and go down this list of buttons, that's one of the things that we have to click off is the fingerprint requirement. So it's an evolving process, but it's pretty doggone good right now. It's getting there.
The thing that's most exciting to me, and Lisa and I spent a lot of time talking about this yesterday afternoon and last night. You look through here based on this report, we've got what, 346 folks since our last meeting have taken computer-based testing. And of those 346 people, I would venture a guess that 80 or 90% of those folks were a part of the backlog. They were waiting to take an exam.
Oh, I don't doubt at all.
And that is knocking that backlog in half. Now that's not to say that everybody's taking the test. So actually, the number is higher than this, because this is actually the number of people that have taken the test. There are a lot more people than that who have got the opportunity to take the test, but still have chosen to schedule it out into August or September to take their exam for some unknown reason. But once we send it to Pearson VUE and they notify the applicant that you're eligible to take the test, I don't consider them on a waiting list anymore. They're waiting, but it's of their own accord. It's not of ours. And if they choose to get it out in September or October, that's up to them, but they're not waiting on us. And just the most exciting thing to me, and I just see it coming together, I can just visualize it. We're going to work through that backlog of applicants. And from that point forward, once we get that worked out, when they send in an application, within a matter of 10 days, we're going to be able to approve them, send them to Pearson VUE, and they're ready to take the test.
I'm concerned about the 10 days, to be perfectly honest.
I thought you might, but that's our goal, is 10 days that they should be able to take the test.
Eventually, I think you will get to that 10 days. I'm being honest.
I think we will too. It's just a matter of when are we going to do it. So
yeah.
let's go.
And how many people do you have doing it, and how quick the turnaround is? But I anticipate that you apply online, we see it pop up on there, we click and approve it, and it's on you completely.
Well, that is our goal, and that is what we want to happen by the end of the year, is we want to clean out all this backlog. And
I think the backlog will be out.
I asked yesterday, and Lisa answered it a good way, that today, if I'm ready to take the tradesman or the journeyman license and I apply online, they're going directly to Pearson VUE. They're not staying here. They're getting forwarded directly to Pearson VUE. So they're already getting immediate reaction for the new ones coming in. So what we're doing in the next 6 weeks or so is trying to work down the rest of that backlog. And they're going to all get through, and we're going to get Waco up and going. Lisa says the 15th, I say the 8th. We're going to get it up and going fast.
Yes, I missed
Get
that.
2 shifts working on Austin and Waco, and we're going to work through that practical exam before you know it. Sometimes, Lisa, you don't even realize the capabilities of this agency. As long as you've been.
You must have talked to Neil since I did.
No, I ain't talking about it. No, it really is coming together. And I've been impatient for 2 years. And I couldn't be more pleased with where we are in this process and the work of the staff and what they've done. And if you think about it, they're doing double duty. We're not only have got 600 or 700 in backlog that we're having to approve it to manually send to Pearson View. We've also got a steady diet of 40 or 50 applicants coming in every week. So it's a huge job, and the staff's doing double duty right now. And it's you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. This is going to work so beautifully, and it's going to eliminate that wait time and backlog. It's going to happen really fast once we get through this initial, and it's working out perfectly because our Waco site is coming on stream just when we need it to, because we're going to have a backlog of practicals because all of these people are taking their written exams. The neat thing is the ones that are journeymen that have moved from tradesmen to journeyman, there is no practical to take. They already took it as a tradesman.
Yeah, those are great.
So once they go from tradesman to journeyman, the next step is shooting a license out. So it's really working well. And once we get through this we're over the hump, and once we finish this, it's going to be fine tuning and trying to perfect what we're doing, even more so than what we're doing. We need to stay in a mode of continuous process improvement. And right now we're got our arms around everything and trying to do it all. But sooner or later, we're going to get to a point of continuous process improvement where we tweak it and make it even easier and even faster for plumbers. So, Lisa, good job to you and the staff.
Thank you.
Lisa?
The 359 people that have been through the Pearson process, those are the, and you got to imagine, we took everything that we had that we could transition to this new program, and we couldn't transition every single person that was already scheduled. It physically did not make sense. So you've got people that are still scheduled the old-fashioned way. And the application process we're still going through, but as we find them or somebody's ready to, we can pull them out and get the written part for them. We've done a pretty good job. Once in a while, there's still somebody lingering around. Maybe they missed one item or whatever, but for the most part, I think we've got them all pushed through there. But out of those 359, I thought it was interesting that there were 8 that scheduled an exam and didn't show up at Pearson. Now they may have rescheduled since I ran this, but I thought that was, but there were 16, which includes that 8 I get. No, there were 16 out of that 350 or 369, 16 of them scheduled and then turned around and rescheduled. So, but they have, what's interesting about it is that they have to do that themselves. We don't have to do it anymore. So the process was great as far as we were concerned. But I want to talk a little bit too about the total number of exams. If you go back to that sheet that I referenced earlier, the purple and green one, that Richard did a good job of trying to combine everything until we get one good solid report. But as of right now, as of July 20th, we've already done 3,796 exams. And that includes all the ones that we were previously doing, the remote ones. That includes the 346 or thereabout that were done at Pearson. And that same time period from last year, we've already surpassed that. Last year, we only had 3,388. And so we're not a full fiscal year. We lack 2 weeks or a month, 6 weeks. So I suspect we'll go easily above the 4,000 mark in a month. We'll see. But the pass fail rate, and I'm also going to send this out to the providers so that everybody can have it. The pass fail, it continues to hover right around 72%. The pass fail for the let me make sure I say it right. Make sure I do the right one. I've got my report all switched up now. The pass fail on the tradesman written was pretty high. That's the ones that were out of the very first batch, and we threw them in there and they were like, oh yeah, we're ready. And they really were ready. They did good. But now we're starting to see them slow down just a little bit. And so I think that'll settle out. And the journeyman has stayed right around 72.3 on the computer base, which is pretty similar to pen and paper, or paper and pencil, I guess I should say. Anyway, it's coming together. We're working hard. We'll have some more collective reports as we move forward. And we're going to get to the point to where it's pretty simple. I can't guarantee exactly when, but it's coming.
Lisa, have you had any reports of mishaps or problems with Pearson View from the applicants?
Yeah, I did have one. I can't remember if I told about it at the last board. Oh, I think I told about it at a town hall.
You did, about taking the wrong test?
Yeah. Did I tell y'all about that?
No, you told me about it. Tell the board about it.
Gosh, yeah. We had a guy that showed up here, and he's like, I went and took this exam at the Pearson place, and he said, I had all this trouble trying to schedule it, and they finally got me scheduled, this long story and everything, and I was looking at who he was and stuff. He said, but I failed it, and I just can't understand why I would fail it. Well, did you study? Were you ready? Blah, blah, blah. Anyhow, so come to find out after I looked, I said, do you have the piece of paper that they gave you that says that you failed it? I wanted to see what his score was. So goes back to the truck, comes back in, and I said, you know what? You didn't take the right exam. You did not take the one that says TSBPE. He actually took an ICC plumbing certification exam. And I don't remember what his score was. It was obviously below 70. I think it was a
68.
High 50s. 58, yeah, high 50. Anyway, and I said, well, I'm sorry you had all of this trouble, and how in the heck they even got him scheduled is beyond me. I don't know. It was weird, because Pearson gives some ICC exams too. And so anyway, I said, you know what? I said, if you don't have anything else to do today, I said, I'm going to sit you down in here and you just retake the exam right now. So I went back in the back and got GW, and I said, just give him the written exam right now. So he sits down, he takes that written exam, fails that. Similar score. And I said, well, you know, I said, you're just going to have to go take the computer based. Because he said, well, I'll try that. So he pays, he goes and takes the computer based. But in the meantime, I had called Pearson back and I said, you gave him the wrong exam. You need to refund the guy's money. It's not his fault. He got all mixed up. We got all that straightened out, got his money back. So he goes and takes the correct exam at Pearson, and he failed that. So all three of them had a very similar score on what he failed. And I think he comes, and now he's got to wait another 30-some days or whatever. I think he's into the next 30 days now. But anyway, he's like, I just can't imagine. And just on and on about failing. And I said, I'm sorry. I said, you've taken all three tests that there are available, and you failed all three of them. So that tells me you need to study. So we went over all these different things he needed to study, and I'll have to watch and see how he does when he
But
comes
you know,
back.
that's really, when you look at us sending 300 or 400 people, one mishap like that is not too bad out of 300 or 400 folks that have gone through the system.
But he was really disappointed, and I said, my gosh, I said, you actually did everybody a favor. I said, because now you've tested all three tests and the failures were similar, and we know you need to study. So whenever you get all done with this, you ought to really know the answers well.
Talk about a guinea pig.
And so actually, I said, if you want to look on the bright side, it worked out.
Well, it worked out for us. I'm not sure about him.
Yeah, and I think he's about to get
out
it. I got to check him, but yeah. And
Was that journeyman or tradesman?
he was a journeyman, I think. Yeah, I got his name in there on my desk.
Lisa, I had some questions about testing and this and that. As you look down the different colored columns, as the residential building guy, one industry, you know, we talk about plumbers, but I can tell you from the home building side, the profession of inspector is really, it's losing numbers as quick as we're losing plumbers. Everyone's retiring. You can't find inspectors for cities, building departments, much less out in the county. The chairman inspired me before lunch because he said, hey, we're going to have to think about new types of licenses and this and that. And I said, hey, why don't we do perhaps a residential inspector or plumbing inspector for 1 and 2 family dwellings coming up in the future? Because getting an inspection on a house out in the county legally is almost impossible. And to get something, maybe have the legislature create this position that we can create some rules for, but to make it simpler to get guys certified just to look at 1 and 2 family homes. It should be fairly simple compared to everything else we do. But right now we're at a crisis point in getting things inspected outside of cities. Granted, inside of cities, they'll tell you they're running short of inspectors too, but I'm just trying to get something simple to the point and not make it overcomplicated. Is that something that would be possible?
Something that the industry would have to look at. I mean, any kind of exam that we wanted to give, we're fully capable of building it. An exam for whatever you want, but that'd be a legislative type thing.
Some of the legislature would have to add.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, that they would have to add a thing and we would have to ask them to do so. But I'm just saying we're at a, either we have done something to make getting an inspector's license very difficult, but when you look at numbers, they're trying, the new guys getting into this are paltry compared to the number of plumbers coming into the industry. So we've got to do something. And I think this would be a start with residential, because in the state of Texas, we will continue to do 40 to 50 to 60,000 starts, even in a downturn. And that's a lot of inspections.
Is there a requirement that a home outside the municipality be inspected?
There are some, yes, there are some counties within our state that generally around large municipalities, Houston, Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, that if you're in these counties, they have rules that you must get inspections at 3 different points as a minimum.
Is it a county requirement or is it part of the city PTJ?
No, it's county.
It's a county.
Part of the public water supplies requirements too.
One thing, I was here for 6 months.
Frank, you got to mute, unmute.
One of the things that I learned, and I've been here for 6 or 8 months and didn't realize, you don't have to have a plumbing license to be an inspector, right?
That's correct.
Almost.
It is right. So tell me what I have to do under the current regulations to become an inspector if I'm not a plumber. What? I'd rather somebody tell me. I can't read it.
You're limited.
I'm going to read it.
Yeah, she's going to read it. Justin, you want to read it?
I think Dave is asking for like a tradesman level inspector.
I don't know if I can do it, but anyway, yeah, you've got to have the 500 hours and a code certification and be employed through a political subdivision. Take an exam, so on and so forth. But you do not.
You do have to be employed by a political subdivision.
Yeah, for the license to be issued. You can take the exam without being employed, but we just don't issue the license until
you go to work.
Yeah, because the authority goes through your employment with a political subdivision, or you can contract.
Again, so that's my point exactly right there.
Yeah,
So you
or
made
you
it
can
impossible.
contract.
You made it impossible for a guy like me who's ICC certified. Unless I work for a city, you just said, I can't get a license.
No, that's not what I said. You can take the exam.
Right.
You're not going to get the license until you're employed with a political subdivision. A political subdivision is something that encompasses typically a geographic boundary and has a governing body and so on and so forth. And what happens is your public water supply ends up being your political subdivision. And we have tons of inspectors that are employed and or contract with the political subdivision.
But that's what I'm saying. If I am ICC certified in plumbing, unless I work for a public entity, which I will never do, I can't get that license.
But whose requirement are you trying to meet? The builder and the lenders?
In
Because
some
that falls
places,
to the real estate.
in some places, yes.
Yeah.
But it's often, so counties are enabled
Yeah.
under statute to require the builder
To
to have
use
a
the license.
third-party inspector
Mhm.
inspect the work, but they are not actually empowered under statute to hire inspectors to send out to do those inspections. So I think that's kind
Might
of
be
creates a
where
little
the-
bit of a catch-22,
Mhm.
which is what I think Dave is trying to address, because so if you're in a county, in a rural county, we'll say Gillespie County, Fredericksburg, and you're outside the city limits, outside the ETJ, they require building inspections, including mechanical inspections, to be submitted to the county. And I think you just file them. I mean, nobody looks at the inspection, but it's a homeowner protection basically.
And a lender protection. I'm
And a
sure,
lender
too.
protection as well. But the county actually can require you to do that, but they can't do it for you.
Yeah.
Right now,
because
we've
they're not
got-
allowed to under statute.
Yeah, most of these third-party companies put very specific wording into their inspection before sheetrock. They'll come out, they'll look at electrical, they'll look at HVAC, but under plumbing, they'll put this cute little disclaimer saying per Texas law, we're not really looking at your plumbing, but here's a few observations we made, because they know they haven't worked for me, just like you said, they don't have a license. So
It's their written observation and opinion is what they're documenting.
I think that's what
Which
they're
falls
saying.
under the real estate inspection
Kind of.
procedures. It's a vicious deal.
But what I'm saying,
It's not really under the real estate. It's in a whole separate section of code. And it's fallout from
the 8 to 10 year period when residential construction had a regulatory and then it got sunsetted and
Yeah,
and mess.
yeah.
And so this was, I think, one of the compromises, but as can sometimes happen, they didn't think all the way through how that works.
And of course, a lot of people will go hire their, somebody to do the inspection for them. But you could almost meet their requirements to be a plumbing inspector.
well, I know, I could probably pass the test because I've looked
Yeah.
at enough plumbing,
Tell
but
us, we can sign you up.
legally, we've made it to the point I don't know why, no offense, whoever wrote it in, but the thing about working for a municipality, that seems like a no,
Forget the word municipality.
or governmental and whatever you were
Political
saying.
subdivision.
Yeah, those people. But
Right.
we should have a way for people that want to be an inspector to inspect perhaps a limited amount of plumbing, i.e. residential. Just 1 and 2 family, not high rises, not any crazy stuff like this, but get it in a way that maybe starting with ICC, if you have that certification, maybe you can come in and take whatever test you have, say, hey, okay, you got it.
What you're saying, I think I understand the problem. I'm not totally clear on the fix, but I think I'm hearing you say what you would like is for the person to be able to take the test and get issued the license, whether or not they work for a governmental entity or not, which would create a whole new
That's a conflict of interest issue that I'll be happy to.
conflict with who?
With who?
Well, what are you going to do? Are you going to allow the person that does the inspection to also install the plumbing? Is that what?
No,
There's
I'm
gonna
saying
be-
our third-party inspectors need to inspect houses legally. That's it. So how can they get this license that Frank described to inspect houses legally?
Most
Without
of
having,
those third-party inspectors already have the plumbing inspector license. What it might be is that they're scared to use it because they think they have to be employed by a municipality. Maybe we need to retrain.
yeah.
I think what they're wanting to do is contract with a builder.
Maybe that's what it is. They want to do a
If they were
contract
allowed
with
to
the
do
builder.
that, then
That it?
What I didn't understand.
we'll have to have this one.
Put your 2 cents worth in here, Steve.
I
Maybe that's what
I
it
was just
is.
saying that, I think the discussion before was, if the inspector was allowed not only to
work for a political subdivision, to use a license, they could also
be allowed to, out in the county, contract with a builder and still be legal to perform inspections. I mean, is that kind of?
In a way,
Because right now
what I'd like to do, if possible, and we can move on, is I will contact some of our third-party inspectors across the state, have them touch base with Lisa and Steve and the chairman and say, hey, as professional inspectors of residential homes, here's our issues with the current plumbing side, and let them explain it to you from their perspective. I would love to get a license, but I don't work for those folks. But those are the guys that are doing this day in and day out all across the state, and we need to get them.
So what I'm trying to be clear on, and I'm with you, I'm ready to move on about this, but is it the plumbing board and our regulations that are standing in the way of doing what
Yes.
you're talking about?
Yes.
And it's because we're not issuing a license until they work for a governmental entity.
Yes.
And what you're advocating is issuing a license and holding them accountable regardless of who they work for.
Yes.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think I understand what you're saying.
And one question, I'm having a little issue just differentiating between a residential inspector and a commercial inspector. The rules are the same.
And a real estate inspector and a plumbing inspector is where we're.
In residential.
Sorry. In residential, in 1 and 2 family dwellings, it's a very defined area of expertise. In commercial, there's a whole lot more in a high rise. There's a whole lot more in this or that. There, in my eyes, a wood framed house with plumbing in it, it's pretty cookie cutter, day in and day out kind of stuff. But you can have all sorts of things in a residential, high rise, all sorts of different. That's why I didn't mention multifamily and other types of construction.
Well, from the industry, I don't see that much difference. I mean, the pipes run the same way.
Right.
I mean, that's the only question I had is how are you going to differentiate that? Because you either know plumbing or you don't when you're an inspector.
Let me stop us here and call on the person that probably knows more about it than you. That's Norma, who is an inspector.
She's got something showing up.
So, Norma, I think you had some comments you want
to make. The floor is yours.
No, I agree with Lisa, what she was saying. I know that in the past, we've run into these issues also. You know, like I mentioned previously, I mean, you know, we're understaffed and I agree with Dave that we do need more. However, I do work for a municipal, you know, entity. However, we're always getting contract, like a third party to make inspections out in the county. But even then we are spread, I mean, to the limit because we can barely do our inspections within our municipality. So that's where I do agree with Dave that we do need to look for some type of solution to provide more people with those licenses. But at the same point, Ron is making a great point that he's saying plumbing is plumbing, regardless if it's, you know, single family or a high rise. So how do you police that in saying, oh, okay, who do we issue that other license to? I mean, there's great points what everybody's making.
That is a great discussion and one that I don't think we're going to resolve here, but certainly one that we need to take a look at, Lynn and Lisa, because no doubt we're going to get, this is going to come up during the legislative session. So we need to formulate a position from the agency standpoint when we get called upon and asked as a resource, how are we going to do this? So thanks for bringing it up, Lisa. Let's put it on an agenda for you and Lynn and I to sit down, maybe even talk to Norma and Dave outside of the board meeting to try to come up with, to clarify the issue and try to come up with an acceptable solution for the plumbing board. So, okay.
And Dave did bring a good point because ICC, I know he was mentioning about ICC certification, and that is one of the requirements, one of the paths that, you know, somebody that doesn't have the plumbing experience that they can take. So perhaps that is something to be considered, you know, with ICC certifications.
No, I'm not going to take public comment on this right now. If that person wants to make a comment, if they'll do it during the public comment section. Oh, I'm sorry. Norma, did you have something else?
No, I'm done. Thank you.
All right, let's move on. And as I understand, let's move on. As I understand it, there was a member of the public that wanted to comment on it, and rather than open it up to the floor at this point, if you will hold on to that comment and make it during the public comment section, would be better for us. So let's move on to our next agenda item. Lisa, do you have anything else on your portion you want to?
No, sir. I have a really good. No, sir, I don't have a lot right now, but I feel like and what you and I talked about this yesterday, I feel like the numbers that we've collected, where we're at, the pass fail, where our backlog's at, and what our challenge is to continue out through the end of the year. I think we're on track. And I think the picture that we have by the end of the year that we'll be presenting is exactly what we want. But it takes a little digging right now, but I'm pretty happy with how it's all coming together. Pretty exciting.
Me too. I'm pretty happy with it also. Are we down? Lisa, were there any further questions for Lisa with respect to her report or any subject that was brought up there? No one? Steve, I think we're down to your report if you want to take it up from there. Hey, you know what? Before I do that, are you ready to make that motion? Lisa's paid. Sure. You know, before we move on to Steve's report, I'm going to take the liberty of taking item number 12 on our agenda and let's handling that right now. It has to do it's listed in discussion and possible action on personnel matters, including but not limited to compensation of the executive director. To give you a little background on this before we take action on it, those of you who attended the last board meeting, we went into executive session and the board unanimously made a decision to move Lisa's salary to the cap, what it was, which amounted to about a $500 a month increase. And furthermore, we suggested and passed a motion to make that retroactive to September the 1st of 21, which would amount to basically a $4,000 bonus in addition to adjusting her pay. Well, it got called to my attention by the controller's office that we can't do that. And I spent a lot of time, hours, and going round and round with the controller's office trying to figure out a way to make that happen. And apparently there's something in the Texas Constitution that does not allow you to pay an employee, a state employee, for work that's already been completed. You know, I personally don't like that, and I'm for rewarding people for jobs well done, but it really doesn't make any difference what I think or our board thinks. And I have to agree with them. I understand what's happened. And quite frankly, the problem was created in the legislature. The legislature was using that as a way to reward staff members after the legislative session. They'd wait and see how they did, and then they'd give them back pay to cover them during the legislative session. And some got it and some didn't get it. And it became an issue. So the controller's office adopted a policy, no retroactive pay, period, which amounts to all of us. Lisa and I have talked about this. I've talked about it with Kenneth. And I won't say Lisa is happy about it, but I also appreciate the fact that she's very understanding about it. And she understands the basis of why we cannot take that retroactive September the 1st. But with that being said, what we can do, since our meeting was in May and we took the action to move her salary effective May 1st, that we can make it now in July, make it back to May. And that's what I am proposing that we do. Justin made the motion originally, and what we need to do is to vacate the last board action concerning that salary and then pass a new motion that would set that salary effective May the 1st. So with that being said,
Actually, can I go ahead and step in just a little bit mechanically? What we need to do is have a motion to reconsider to bring the actual previous motion back in play. And then after that motion to reconsider passes, have a supplemental motion saying now we'd like to amend the previous action to recognize the effective date of May 1st, 2022 on the executive director's increase in compensation.
he's got the written motion.
That was my plan.
He's ready.
So with that, Mr. Chair, I make a motion to reconsider the action taken by the board at the May meeting to increase the executive director's compensation to $120,586 annually, with it being retroactively effective on September 1st, 2021.
Motion, is there a second? Tommy seconds. All those in favor signify by saying aye reluctantly.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Is there another motion?
Yes, sir. I would also make a motion to amend the effective date of the increase in the executive director's $120,586 annual compensation to be May 1st, 2022.
Motion, is there a second?
Darren Black, second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Sorry about that, Lisa.
Yeah.
Did all we could do.
Thanks for trying. And I admit there was a time whenever they did allow you to go retroactive. We didn't think much about it other than that. Oh, okay, no problem. And then that gives you a year's worth of your pay, basically. So either I got to stay an extra year or something.
Well, that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
I see how this works.
You know, I will say this, that the legislature puts a cap on how much we're allowed to pay their executive director. And Lisa has not had an increase, I think, since 2018. And this basically gets her up to the cap that we're allowed to pay, the maximum we're allowed to pay. I don't think it's near enough. And as a part of our legislative appropriation request, we're going to ask that those brackets be changed. We've got a little bit more leeway on our executive director's pay. And Lisa, I don't mind telling you, I don't think I'm betraying any confidence in our executive session. Had the cap been higher, you would have gotten higher pay.
Well, I appreciate that, Frank.
So we, you know, you can't spend it, but take it.
And I do know that you went above and beyond of asking everybody that could possibly have had the answer to it too. And I appreciate that.
And I thought I had a great idea, just as a footnote, what I suggested, that we raise her pay by $6,000 for 2 months and then take her pay back down. And I got told, well, you know, that's just a sneaky way to get around paying
You can't
back.
do that either. So,
and you know what? I couldn't argue with that. They're probably right, but I thought it was a great idea. But
we tried everything.
so at any rate, Lisa, thank you for the job you do. Thank you for the understanding or the issue having to do with the pay situation. And thank you, board, for all that you do. So, okay, with that being done, Steve, I'm going to turn it over to you and enforcement.
Under tab 8, what we're looking at is the committee meetings report of complaints that were reviewed. This is through March through May. There were 5 meetings that met to review a total of 224 complaints. The number of administrative penalties imposed was 137. Of course, of the alleged violations, of course, contracting still stays high, but as we had seen in the past, violations of the state plumbing code or municipal ordinances creeped up and started to take over, and that includes not taking out permits and improper installation. So it just seems like no permit is kind of getting to be a standard of some of the ones that we get here lately. Of course, the others are all broken out. If you have any questions on those, we also have below listed the others that were no administrative penalties issued, anywhere from voluntary compliance through no violation, no jurisdiction, and they're all broken out for viewing as well. You have any questions on the complaints reviewed?
I've asked.
I think that I asked this 6 months ago. And on the bottom, you got 34 no proof violations. Is that the same thing? Inadequate evidence?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So not necessarily no proof, it's just inadequate proof.
That it would support a violation.
Okay, thanks.
And not, we can move on.
With any other questions on that particular report?
Under tab 9 is the committee meeting for, these are for reviews for applications, denials, approvals and denials. And of course, 113 reviewed, 54 registration applications for registration or examination approved. And of course, broken down into number of renewal applicants that was approved as well, 54 and 50. You'll see the number of renewal applicants denied or revoked, that there was 5. And basically of those 5, 3 of them had to do with fingerprints. So fingerprints are catching quite a few. Most of the others that like fingerprints that we get on just applicants, most of the ones that we're finding that that have a, let's say, false informations, they provide us, they said they didn't have a criminal history, they didn't have a felony conviction or misdemeanor. Most of those are out of state ones that are coming in. So fingerprinting is, I think it's really been a plus, you know, as far as at least, you know, we get the opportunity, we need to review all information when it has to do with criminal activity. And if, you know, if the board decides that it's adequate and they feel like that there has been restitution or there has been that they've paid their debt to society and they've rehabilitated is the word I was looking for. And then that's what we need to look at. For them just to come in and say no and try to lie and get by it, and you know, the fingerprinting is really doing its job.
You know, for the benefit of the board and maybe the benefit of the public, I want to talk a little bit about how this process works. And Tommy, it goes to a point that's near and dear to your heart. You asked me about it when you first got on the board. Just because you've been convicted of a felony does not mean you're prohibited from getting a license. The way this thing works, please correct me if I'm wrong about this, but as I understand it, the person gets their fingerprint and we get a report back from the company, and it will list, if you have no criminal convictions, you just sail right through. Nobody ever looks at you. If there is a felony, and say it's within 5 years, it's reviewed by an individual named Chris. Chris looks at those, and then he will determine, he will then send them over to Steve's department. And that's where this report takes place. Those that have been convicted of a felony, then Steve and his committee take a look at it to determine if it should prohibit them from receiving a license or being issued a license. Kathleen is the person in the department. So, but it goes to show you that just because you've been convicted of a felony, yeah, it's going to rise to the top. It might get some scrutiny. But if you look at out of 113 that were reviewed, there were probably thousands that were never even looked at because they didn't have any criminal history. So they just sail right through. But of the 113, you've got less than a half a dozen that have been either denied or are on hold waiting for additional information. So it's a good process, and it's, I believe, to be a fair process that doesn't deny employment to someone who is either a minor infraction or even a major infraction, and sufficient amount of time has passed and they've demonstrated a rehabilitative effort to get their life straight, and they still got a license. So I think it's a good example of something that you had talked about early on about that. So did I explain that correctly, Steve, the way that works?
No other questions on that. And tab 10, that's field activity summary report. Through the quarter, these are activity of the field investigators, all listed there and totaled out. I will make mention that, of course, we did lose one of our field investigators. So again, we were up at our maximum amount of 9, and now we're back down to 8 again. So these totals are with our at least a portion of the final month where we had Christian Smith as a field investigator. So if there's any questions on that, I'd be glad to answer it.
Any questions, board members? Field investigation.
And then that would bring us to tab 11, which I believe is the cease and desist orders. These are going to be those that were unlicensed, unregistered contracting. They're going to get a cease and desist order along with a notice of alleged violation. Those are just posted, listed for review. Lisa has already signed those cease and desist orders, and they've been sent out certified mail.
No action necessary on the part of the board. They're just for your information, but I will point out 12 out of 12 were unlicensed activity.
They're all going to get it. So
any questions on our cease and desist orders? Okay, you want to move on to the board ordered administrative penalties?
Board orders under tab 12, and this is just a list of violations that were issued, notice violations, and these are all have been paid. So it's quite a, you can see 13 pages of violations that we have collected on. So
Again, you've got 79 violations here. I want you to take time, whatever time you need to look through them and ask any questions, but of the 79, 34 of them, again, were as a result of unlicensed or improper license.
So it's still a high percentage of even the ones that were actually paid were for unlicensed or improper license activity. This one, we will need a motion to approve these unless there are any questions.
well, it'll have to be signed. I think we've talked about it before, but you'll notice in engaging, we do have a class A and a class B engaging. So if you look at your penalty matrix, there are listed in class A, class B. Class B, we look at, it's a lesser penalty, but it's those that apprentices or somebody maybe that's sent out by a responsible master to perform the work. Kind of give them a little bit of a break on that. If they're unlicensed and they're out contracting and engaging, then they're going to get the class A engaging in plumbing, which is a $4,000 penalty in it by itself. And then of course, contracting is $5,000 on top of that. So,
and that explains the differentiation between.
That explains the differentiation between the amount of penalty that would appear to be the same, but it's really not. So, Darren, you had a question? Okay. Any questions about any of these cases individually or collectively that any of the board members have? Ron?
Noticed a few aspects like that. Bottom at the repeats. And I was just in the process of looking, when there are repeats, do they go to a class A automatically?
Well, no other, if they had no others, then typically if a licensee is going to get 25% settlement offer, when it goes to the repeat, then it bumps up accordingly. So
Okay.
you're gonna, by the third time, there's not going to be any settlement.
Okay, so
You'd get one more
the
shot.
question is, we are popping them if they're repeat violators.
Right. And then if they go again, then we're talking either probated suspension or full suspension of license for, and it would be a minimum of 12 months for the suspension. So.
And Steve, I appreciate your putting the asterisks on there because before you started doing that, we couldn't figure. Before you started putting that asterisk on there,
We couldn't figure out why some of the penalties were higher or lower. And I further appreciate your putting this list on the end of it so we can look at what they were charged with the first time and go back to the current.
Thing is, sometimes they're going to be enhanced because it had to do with natural gas. The nature of the complaint itself. So those are all things that are considered, during the meeting. So there's different variables that come into play. And then, of course, the other on tab 12 should be your previous violator list. That's hence the asterisks, and that's what would have stimulated the increase in the penalty on the board order.
Any other questions? If there are none, it would be appropriate for a motion to approve these administrative penalties paid by agreement and authorize the chairman to sign the appropriate documents.
Mr. Chair, Justin McDonald, I move adoption of the board order published in tab 12 of the board book and authorize the chairman to sign accordingly.
Is there a second?
Ron Ainsworth, second.
Ron Ainsworth seconds. With no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, number F, default orders.
Defaulted. We haven't gotten any response back from them regarding their notice of alleged violation. Give them ample opportunity to respond and make some sort of decision whether they want to accept a settlement or if they want to go to a hearing, and we'd be happy to set them up with a hearing if they're so chose, but we did not get any response in these. So these are 20 we're bringing before the board as that had defaulted, and we had not received any notifications or responses from our notices of alleged violation.
again, I'll point out that 18 of the 20 have to do with unlicensed or inappropriate licenses. Any questions? If not, is there a motion to approve these default orders and authorizing the chair to sign the appropriate document?
Ron Ainsworth, so moved.
Motion, is there a second?
Justin McDonald, second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, you were muted during the
That's a reception.
Throw it.
I'm glad I didn't do that.
I was? Okay, well, Mr. Ainsworth made the motion, Mr. McDonald seconded that we approve all the default orders and authorizing me to sign the appropriate documents, and it passed by unanimous vote. What else? Okay. Are we down to public comment? Does anybody want to comment? I know we maybe have one that wanted to talk about that inspector license, but is there anyone present? Well, step on up and please identify yourself and let him fix your, where we can all see you. Mr. Yelovich, many of you might not have heard, but said that if we didn't have Kevin, I'd have to be the IT guy. That enlisted pretty good chuckle out of all the staff, especially. So it'd be like the Twilight Zone. That's right. Thank you, Kevin.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for allowing me a couple of minutes to say my piece. My name is Sam Dowdy. I own a plumbing company in Taylor, Texas, the big small town of Taylor. I've been in business for 42 years and I've worked in the trade for 48 years. I actually was, we talked about this facility being in 1981. I remember, and this is important, I remembered, came up to visit my wife's family. Sunday came and I told my wife, hey, how about if I just stay over and go stand outside the door, and if somebody doesn't show up for their master's exam, maybe I could get in. So I did. That's how I got my master's exam date. Called, was just standing at the door saying, heck with everybody else, I'm going to get in there and take my test. So I was anxious to do that. I've been involved with the trade through PHCC. I've been on the board for many years. I took a 3-year hiatus from that to settle some matters issues that I deal with personally. But I'm back involved, and it's really exciting to see what I saw today. What you guys are, how you're progressing this board. From the bottom of my heart, I want to say thank you, because what I hit, the comment I made to my wife last night as we was going to bed, she said, what are you going to do tomorrow? I said, I'm going to go on behalf of 3 of my employees that are trying to get a date, and I'm going to go see what I can do about straightening things out. And she said, well, what are you going to tell me? How are you going to do it? And I said, well, I'm going to just do like everybody else. I'm going to be the grumpy old plumber that stands up and says his piece the way that we all have done it. I've been around the plumbing board, coming up here, been in attendance for many years, and I've enjoyed, but I've been embarrassed about how some of the presentations have come and how the transaction between the board and the citizens are. So that being said, I very much appreciate what you guys and the staff are doing. I have 3 technicians or 3 apprentices that are applying for their exams. In this case, they're all tradesmen. And I work with the schools. Taylor, I've got a contract with them to start a class this year. And I've worked with TSTC in the past. And so that's important to understand the way our business model is set. We bring kids in from early on. We try to get them in high school, but we start teaching them the trade and clock their hours from the moment they show up and apply for an application. First thing we do is get them on the apprenticeship card and get them tracking hours. And we get them licensed every single step of the way. Residential utility installers can repair a leak in a yard and repair a sewer line in a yard, install the same. But so it's important that we set career paths in our business that have pay scales, so these kids can see, or these men or women can see what they can do and how fast they can achieve those based off of their licenses, which is based off of the regulations that are set here in this room. So these kids are pushing to get their licenses, and we've been pushing for the last few years about getting the process of the testing done faster. So my intention for here is to come in and say, this is silly, we've got to get it corrected. And most recent with these 3 kids, I put them, I said, you're off work, you're going to go stand in front of the plumbing board, same way I did, and see if you can't get a test. They go to the room, come back out, Mr. Dowdy, this is not working. Well, go back in there and ask this. Well, I'm embarrassed. I don't care if you're embarrassed, let's go back and let's keep pushing the issue. So we got it to the point where I can tell this morning on my drive over here, I found out there's a communication errors between some things here, some things, most things on my apprentices end. It's communication, learning how to read emails correctly and things of that nature. So I think I've answered with some off-site sessions. I've got all my questions answered. I see where it's going, but I wanted to stay around long enough to thank you for the process of what are the improvements that what you're doing to the board. It means a lot. It means a lot to these 3 kids. One of them has 4 kids. He lives in Buda, at our Buda location, and he's trying to get a tradesman's license. And I can remember, I raised 4 kids. I know how tough it is, but I was the owner of the company. And he sees his career path written down before him. And all I got to do is get that license and I can make more money. So it helps our customers, it helps our business, helps me to run a business, but most importantly, it helps those kids or those men or the women that are getting those licenses. It helps them to support their families. So anything we can do as me personally to get involved to help this process, I'm open to it, but I'm glad I get the opportunity. I think you was working here as a kid when I took my exam.
Yeah, right.
I'm really proud to stand up to say thank you for what you guys are doing.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. My only hope is that we don't have 200 people standing at the front door next week after they heard that. So.
And you know that it's funny you tell that story, but there still are once in a while somebody shows up on the wrong day, or they show up and for whatever reason somebody just canceled, and so we don't highly recommend it. But if there's a blank spot, a lot of times we'll just shove somebody in there if they happen to say they're ready.
Lisa, you just opened the door. I'm telling you.
I know, but I was trying to shove it just a little bit from what Sam did there.
Come on up.
Ron Ward with Southwest Pipe Trades. I also want to say a great job on putting everything together, the legislative priorities, and we're staying with y'all to work with y'all to see the board gets everything, especially the pay increase for the folks. We are very supportive of that. One of the things I wanted to bring up and kind of dovetails with the previous gentleman, the slight concern about the fee increase, especially for apprentices. It's a little concerning that, you know, we're talking about not putting bars up for folks to get into this industry. We want to make it as easy as possible. Everybody needs people. And so hopefully, you know, master plumbers can pass that cost on. Apprentice, you know, if they're starting with a family, money's tight. So hopefully there's a discussion with that, and hopefully we can work that out. And with the inspector, actually, I don't think it's a license issue. I think it's a pay issue. Those jurisdictions that have those inspectors, if they would pay folks more, you wouldn't go from being an inspector to seeing you could make more out in the field or in another industry and go jump and do something else. So you know, it might be a licensing issue, but it could very well be you know, cities, the counties need to pay their folks more too, and you would retain those folks in the retirement. You know, our industry has a lot of people at that retirement age. We have a huge problem in front of us right now, trying to bring new people in. So I understand trying to figure out ways to work with inspecting jurisdictions or third party. A third party used to never hear that. Now it's exploded into inspection. So we would like to work with that and see if we could help as well, because it holds up projects everywhere. So, but thank you very much for your time today, and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lord. We always appreciate your attendance and comments. Anyone else? Don?
Yes, sir. We have Mr. Freddie Black online.
Mr. Black, can you hear us?
Everyone, please mute.
Okay.
How's that? Can everyone hear me now, Mr. Denton? Okay, good. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. I just happened upon this meeting today, but I thought it would be a good time. Just as a lead-in, I had filed a complaint about a particular plumber here a while back, and I received a response from Mr. Davis on the complaint on June 16th. Just for information, the complaint number is 2022-009.
Mr. Black?
Yes, sir.
Let me interrupt you just for a second.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask a question of you. Is this a complaint that is still pending?
No, sir, it's been settled.
It's resolved and it's over?
Yes, sir, according to the letter from Mr. Davis, it is.
Hang on just 1 second. If I could get you to hold on just for a second. Let me.
Absolutely.
Talk with it. Yeah, my question is, are we getting Lynn into an ex parte communication? The problem we have, Mr. Black, and this is what I'm trying to avoid, if there's still an appeal, or if there's still, this could become still an active complaint, we're not allowed to talk about that outside the presence of the complainant or the respondent. And I don't, it's to help you. If there is further action on this case, it would create a problem for our board. It's called an ex parte communication. We can't have communication with one party. If it's done and over and it's everything, the appeal is exhausted, then you're welcome to make a complaint. But if this is an active complaint, or even there's a possibility of this complaint going forward, I'm going to have to ask you to refrain discussing it. So I'll leave it to you, sir.
Okay, let me be very clear. The options that was given to me by Mr. Davis was that I have the opportunity, if I wish to.
Black, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt you again. This is Lynn Latome, General Counsel. I think our chairman is just asked if there is any further opportunity for further action on this case, and we don't know at this moment. I would offer you the alternative to hold on to your public comment, and I'd be happy to call you after this meeting and see if there's anything further to do on your case. If there is not, then you're certainly welcome to come back at a later meeting. If there is something that I can address with you on a pending, or let's say not final complaint, I'll be happy to address that at that time. I leave it to you.
Mr. Black, let's do this way. Let's take a little bit of what Lynn said and what you said. I'm going to adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes. And if you will talk with Lynn to let her know a little bit more about this case, possibly we can let you make your comments now if possible. Okay. And if not, we'll defer it till, would that be okay with you, Mr. Black?
It would be wonderful. I just apologize for you fellas having to wait 5 minutes for me to.
Hey, you know what?
You're
the reason we're here. It's not a problem. So I'm going to recess for 5 minutes. How do I get you two together? I hate to ask you to give me your phone number over the phone, over the public.
Not at all. I can give it to you if you'd like.
All right, here, he's going to give us his phone number for you to call him.
It is 795-1222.
Did y'all get that? Repeat it one more time. I'm sorry.
832-795-1222.
Have we got it? Okay, Mr. Black, if you'll stand by your phone, and I'm going to encourage both you and our attorney to make it quick. Let's get to the bottom line so that we can move on. And I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and we're going to stand in recess for 5 minutes. Sorry, board, but I wanted to do this. So.
Thank you, sir.
I don't know if Mr. Black is still with us or not. Can you tell Don whether he's there? At any rate, okay, whether he is or is not, in fact, Mr. Black did have there you are, Mr. Black, does have a complaint that he wishes to discuss, and it would be an ex parte communication for him to communicate with the board individually on an open or active case. And Lynn has given him an opportunity where he can give input to our staff and our enforcement people outside the presence of the board. Is that correct, Mr. Black? That's acceptable.
Yes, sir, it is. I appreciate your time and the advice too. Thank you, sir.
Okay, you're more than welcome. Okay, we will move on now. Anyone else for public comment?
No, sir.
Okay, we lost the person that was going to comment about the inspector. I take it. Person that wanted to speak earlier. Okay. Anyone else have anything to say? All right, we're to that item, discussion regarding date of next board meeting and recommendation for future board meeting agendas. My estimation is we'll be looking at first part to the middle of September on our next board meeting. Lynn, are we going to be ready to talk about some additional rules?
If it's the end of September, we would have finished our public comment period with the Texas Register, and I've spoken with the office, the Governor's Office of Regulatory Compliance, and unofficially, they have said they will try to service our needs and get us any kind of response necessary from them by September. I can't tell you when in that time frame we have in mind, but I'd say, you know, see if you can accommodate something end of September, and we can work with that.
I was not so much speaking of rules that are in the pipeline. I'm talking about new rules that we've not discussed yet. I'm ready to start the board.
Sure, and I'll let you know. We have been looking at and had earlier started, and it got somewhat tabled while we were working on strategic planning in LAR. But we've been working on Chapter 363 with the site in front of us to work on 367. So I would say that 363 could be on the table at that time for sure.
Let's make sure it is. How about that?
Sure.
What else do we need on our agenda? Any Lisa, anything that come to mind that we didn't discuss today or we need to discuss again? I still want to keep plugging away on this outreach and the unlicensed activity part. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't, if we could we have some more discussion towards the reciprocity with the other states?
Sure.
So we can kind of get more into the weeds of how that looks and who we're going to invite in. Just one of my questions that was raised in reading the reciprocity with Arkansas was, what happens if a journeyman, if they reciprocate with another state and we're getting those people that we don't? Okay, I just, just not to create a topic right now, but discuss it. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And Lynn, it probably would be good if you and Lisa will kind of put together an overview of what states that we're in communication with and kind of how they handle their licensing program. And we'll put it on the agenda, and maybe the Arkansas one will be ready to vote on to send to the governor's office. But that's a good point. And we will put reciprocity agreements, not just with Arkansas, but any other state on the agenda to discuss. So.
And I think maybe by next time we might have somebody from New Mexico.
Anyone else? Anything? Well, I'll promise you we'll come up with something to talk about. I hope to have something further to report with the Texas Workforce Commission. We will be discussing and talking about how many people we've tested in Waco at our new testing facility by then. We'll get a report on that. We will most likely hear that the backlog has been eliminated by the middle of September. Of journeyman and tradesmen, those that are eligible to take the, and I would suspect we will be have behind us by that time the large testing of the masters in Waco that we can report on.
I think we can do a pretty good chunk, try to, again, put them all in one room, even if we have to do it right here.
Sure.
Just to get them.
What Lisa and I have talked about, and we'll talk about this is a future agenda item to discuss, but we've got all these masters, and the masters cannot yet take it online. So we've got a group of a lot, 100 maybe, would you say?
Maybe 70, I think.
70, 80 masters that are waiting to take their tests. Lisa and I had discussed possibly having this large group come together and be tested in Waco like we attempted to do the last time and knock all those masters out. And those that choose not to come may have to wait on it to take it online. We're not going to do it twice.
Yeah, the transition is that's gonna help
Yeah.
us with the transition.
Sure will. So if we can eliminate all those that are waiting in one fell swoop, and I would encourage those masters, if any of them are listening or if you know any of them, be looking for a date and jump on that when we offer it, because it might delay your getting your masters if you don't attend it. So anything else? Well, yes, sir.
Just a request as always, but on the future board meeting dates, if we could just get that out as early as possible so that we can all plan to be here. That
Okay.
is helpful.
We will do that. Anything else? Anybody? Staff, anything else? Kevin? All right. You still sick? Kevin is sick and he still showed up. Thank you, Kevin. He was here. He was here when I left at 6:30. So, and well, he's been COVID tested several times, so he doesn't have COVID. Okay. With no further business, it's 2:32. We'll call the meeting adjourned.